Okay, it's gone 6 o'clock, so we'll get the meeting underway. Welcome to the Ordinary Meeting of Council, 26 February 2025. Check that we're live streaming. All good, thank you. Nala kadich wajak mort kan karak nija walilat buja, wajinang wajak kadajan, we're knitting bula yeah. We acknowledge the Whadjuk people as the traditional owners of the Greater Fremantle Walyalup area, and we recognise that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important today. The meeting is being recorded and streamed live online. While all care is taken to maintain privacy, visitors in the public gallery and members of the public submitting a question may be captured in the recording. Attendance, apologies and leaves of absence. We have no leaves of absence. We have councillors Mofflin, Lang and Thompson who are going to be late to the meeting. Do we have any applications for leave of absence? Do we have any disclosures of interest by members? Councillor Lorver?
Yes, thank you. Just getting an item. Just on the notice of motion C250219, just got to declare that I'm not a member of a political party or anything like that.
Thank you, Councillor Lorver. In relation to the same item, I would like to declare an impartiality interest, and I'm a member of the Labor Party. So if I can have the form for that, that would be great. Are there any other declarations?
Can I just confirm that it's an impartiality interest?
Councillor Lorver, what sort of interest were you declaring there?
Declaring that I'm not a member of a political party. Understood that we were...
What sort of so under the interests?
Impartiality. Yeah, impartiality,
Thanks.
but I'll stay in the room. My apologies.
Okay, members?
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
I mean, is that something that we're obliged to do, declare that we are or are not at this point? I mean...
I'll go to the CEO for advice.
Through the chair, under the Local Government Rules of Conduct regulations, an elected member is required to decide whether being an association or having a friendship with someone requires them to declare an impartiality interest. It's up to the elected member to decide if or how that applies to them.
I hope that helped clarify things. All right, lots of fun things going on. If we have no further disclosures of interest, I'll go to responses to previous public questions taken on notice. The agenda contains responses to questions that were taken on notice at the AGME on the 3rd of February, and there were no questions taken on notice at the Ordinary Meeting of Council on the 12th of February. So that's going to take us to public question time. Those who have been here before will know that that's 3 minutes. You will hear a little sound to remind you that your 3 minutes is wrapping up, and because we have a lot of people here tonight, at 3 minutes I will ask you to stop speaking. We will look at reorganising the agenda, so the items that most people are here for will be dealt with early on in the agenda rather than in the agenda order, so that you can stay for your item and then leave should you desire. All right, so the first person I have listed to speak is John Alberti on C250211.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors, officers. Thank you for your time. Mayor, I'm here tonight representing our sister city of Capoto Orlando and Fremantle, and I have been given the authority by the Mayor of Capoto Orlando, Franco Ingrid Lee, to give you an official invitation to represent the city of Fremantle on behalf of the sister city to attend Capoto Orlando, the centenary of the 100 years of the city council. I've got the invite here, so I'll read it to you. Sorry, that's the wrong one. I've got here a subject invitation to event centenary of the autonomy of Capoto Orlando, 27 to 30th of April 2025. I have the pleasure of inviting you in your capacity as Mayor and representative of Fremantle to the May Day dedication to the twining between our cities. The period in which the events will occur include in the program of the centenary of our city, which will blow out 100 candles. Of this administrative autonomy on the 27th of September is from April 27 to the 30th, 2025. Our community will be honoured to have you as guests for this period, together with an institutional delegation from your municipality. the hospitality of the sister cities and 2 others people of the delegation will be paid for by our municipality. This is Capital London Municipality, with check-in on the 26th of April and check-out on May the 1st. So what they are saying is that they would like either 2 other councillors to go or 2 officers to attend this centenary as well, and we'll got accommodation and everything else that goes with it for them. During the 4 days dedicated to the twining, the history that binds Fremantle and Capital London from the end of the 1800s to the present day will be retraced with various events. Considering the fraternal relation between our 2 communities, we are sure of your presence in Capital London. While waiting for our response, I'll take this opportunity to greet you accordingly, Mayor Dr. Francesco Ingrilli. This is the official invite, which I had translated. I also got another invite for you, and the same with the 2 councillors or 2 officers to go. And if you recall, we had Franco Pertigizzi here, the journalist and documentary maker, in October for the Blessing of the Fleet, and he did a documentary on Fremantle, which was amazing. I've got it here in English somewhere. Here we go. Dear John, I remind you that on Friday, 21st of February, our Mayor Franco Ingrilli from Palazzo Europa, that's Palazzo Europa is the actual council building. So on the 21st, on Friday, what happened, they had actually the launch of the 100 years of the city, right, which I did a call directly during the opening of the centenary festivities. We also participated by phone, that's what it just says, via WhatsApp, or we'll call you around 11:30. In addition, as you can see from the program of the centenary of our city published on the website, and I've got a copy here in the folder for you as well, on the webpage of the Municipality of Capital London, there are 2 periods dedicated to the twining between Fremantle and Capital London. The first will be a...
John, I might interrupt you just because we've gone over 3 minutes and I'm going to apply the rule to everyone. But perhaps can we hand those up to officers so that we can consider them during the discussion later on tonight?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'll just get someone to come and grab those. Thank you so much. All right, the next person I have registered, I understand this person wanted to go earlier, is Tracy Smith. Okay, right, that's odd. I think she must have pre-registered and asked to go early. Okay, let's go back to the order that I had typed out. So Ian Kerr is next up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to speak to the item on the Mills and Wares Park dog off-leash petition. And firstly, let me thank the officers for not hurrying to judgment on this one, either way, because on the petition to change Mills and Wares Park to a dog off-leash area. In view of the recommendation, I will not go through arguments specific to the petition, but it is worth noting that this is a potentially complex issue with this park, because public parks are community assets and should collectively serve the needs of the community. But individual parks might have characteristics such as size, configuration and location that limit their ability to cater for all community needs. And moreover, each park needs to be considered in context. And to be fair, this is what the petitioners did in respect of the areas available for them to exercise their dogs. But the context needs to be broader than that specific demographic. As a bit of background, Mills and Wares Park was from the start an integral part of the redevelopment of the former Mills and Wares biscuit factory, and that includes the flower loft and a great number of houses on Wardy Street as well. It was always intended to be a public park. However, primary pedestrian access to the biscuit factory village has always been via that park, and this would have been part of the original development approval. An additional complication that's come to light in just the past week or so is the existence of a single residential block on Wardy Street that has remained undeveloped since 1993. This block is currently for sale, and its development would change the visible extent of the park and make the park appear smaller, as well as potentially closing off access to the park from the laneway. I support the recommendation that the petition be considered as part of the review of the dog exercise and prohibited areas policy to be brought back to the Council before the end of 2025, in line with a review of the local laws relating to dogs. In fairness to all concerned, however, I urge that this be done sooner rather than later, and I understand that Councillor Williamson Wong has an amendment to this item which would have that effect. I would also urge that to facilitate this, and recognising the complexity of the issue for this particular park, that a community working group be established to consider options for improving and managing the park. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Sean McKay.
Hello, my name's Sean. I'm from South Fremantle. That was quick.
Carry on.
Great. I have questions in regards to the City of Fremantle 2023-2024 annual report. And just some context, I'm a graphic designer with almost 30 years experience. During the annual general meeting of electors earlier this month on the 3rd of February, comments were made by electors that although there were some nice large photos used in the report, they couldn't read some of the text. I had a look myself and realised that was the case. In the Mayor's message, page 11, for example, the text set is at 6 point on a thin white font on a dark background. In the financial section, there's text displayed as low as 4 point. Accessibility guidelines followed by government and local government can be found online at Disability Gateway and Vision Australia. These guidelines are maintained by anyone producing annual reports such as this one. They require for text to be set at least 12 point in size, which makes the text used in the new City of Fremantle report half the size required. Not only would it be hard to read for someone that was sight impaired, it'd be hard for anyone to read that doesn't have a magnifying glass. What was the point of setting text at this tiny size? Was it to make it illegible for some reason? Or has this report been put together by someone that doesn't know what they're doing? When your website states, the City of Fremantle encourages diversity and is committed to creating an accessible, inclusive and welcoming community for people of all abilities, why would you produce a document as important as this that wasn't accessible and actually made it hard for people with perfect vision to read? I understand there's an online PDF that can be viewed, but it's exactly the same as the printed version. So if there's only one version of the report, why hasn't it been designed with this basic requirement in mind? So my questions are, why have accessibility guidelines not been met with this year's report? Who approved this document before it went to print? How many reports were printed? And what was the cost of design and print? Thanks.
Thanks. I'll pass that one to CEO.
Thank you, through the chair. The City acknowledges that some of the accessibility of the report is difficult on the hard copy to read, and we are happy to provide other formats to anyone upon request. Some of that font is small to read, we agree with that. It was approved by the executive team. There were 70 copies of the report actually printed. The rest are electronic and on our website. And I think it cost us less than $5,000 to print it. And the City will make sure there are ability to access other bits on the website as we move forward. Thanks.
Okay, Sally McKay.
My name's Sally. I am in South Fremantle. At the November 2024 Council meeting, Dr Sally Price presented information on the dangers of the experimental COVID-19 injections and asked for the Council to support the motion to stop the experimental trial drug. Mayor Hannah Fitzhardinge stated that this was a state matter and would not now nor in any time in the future comment on this. As an elected mayor, Hannah held a special meeting in March 2022 to hear arguments for and against the mandates, then led the voting to endorse the mandates, thereby discriminating against her constituents and violating human rights according to the Nuremberg Code, whose most basic principle is the voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. In January 2022, Hannah posted a video of her being injected with a COVID-19 injection and then encouraging her constituents to do the same. She based it on doing the right thing and would hate to transmit the COVID to anyone. The Pfizer trial data was released online with parts redacted in 2021 and then unredacted in April 2022. If Hannah had done her due diligence, she would have seen the trial data show that it was never tested to see if it stopped transmission and that the third most common side effect was actually catching COVID. This was the same trial data that the TGA approved for the rollout, meaning the TGA knew it didn't stop transmission and in fact made you contract it. It is in all the primary source documents that can be readily available. The ratepayers of Fremantle who refused to be injected with this trial drug were then denied access to the facilities and the public spaces that their rates help pay for. Hannah, you cannot now decide to not act on these demands regarding this so-called safe manner just because it was inconvenient or makes you look bad. Hannah has interacted with her constituents on public record and is now obligated to act on these matters as demanded by those who voted for her constituents. At the annual general electors meeting, I spoke about leadership. A great leader is one who learns from mistakes, takes accountability and takes steps to rectify their errors. Where is your leadership, Hannah? My questions, given I notice, are directed to Hannah. Have you read the evidence of documents emailed through to you? Where did you get your information about stopping transmission from COVID from what you put into your Facebook video reel? Did you use council rates to pay for the making and promoting of this video reel, and how much did it cost? And given that it is a state matter, will you pay this money back? Also, given that it's a state matter, why did you decide to make a video promoting the trial injection?
I'll answer those ones now. So I think the first one was, where did I get my information from? The state government COVID-19 website. Did it cost any money? No, it didn't. I think you noticed that it was pretty much handheld basic video. Why did I do that? I don't think I have to answer that here. Would I change anything now? No, I wouldn't. So I think it was implied in your question in terms of leadership. I stand by it. Please be quiet. Thank you. I'm not getting into a debate with someone in the gallery, any of you. Just to be clear, we don't do that. Riley Patterson.
Okay, thanks for having me. I'm Riley and I'm from Beaconsfield, 6162. I want to dedicate this to the vaccine injured because the COVID jab has injured me and I've been suffering for the last 3 years. I want to summarise my experience and start with this. I had a natural infection of COVID-19 back in March 2020 at a friend's wedding in Brazil. I got over it in 3 days and had natural immunity. When the mandates were coming into effect in 2021, I couldn't get an exemption, even though I had my antibodies checked and I was positive for COVID-19 antibodies without being vaccinated. So natural immunity was confirmed. I decided not to go with the mRNA injections because it had many adverse events that was happening to my work colleagues. And when the Novavax was made available in February 2022, I went with that. Since then, I've been in a living hell of symptoms, nearly died and lost everything in the process. I have not been able to be treated by anyone in the mainstream medical system due to the censorship and the gaslighting of being vaccine injured, which has been admitted by Mark Zuckerberg, the owner of Facebook. He was talking about a lot of the censorship since the Trump government has been come in. He has had to change his style. I had to go outside the mainstream medical system and seek help from people overseas. Before I got worse, I even died. I consider myself one of the lucky ones because I'm making inroads and starting to get better, though I never think I might and be the same again and possibly have my life cut short. The others aren't so lucky. I've spoken to many who have had their lives and whole families have been injured. With the world's changing order, new developments are coming to light, with the newest Yale University study of circulating spike proteins still being produced ongoingly for over 700 days after vaccination and the confirmation of DNA contamination in the batches. I also have with me a redacted document of the DNA contamination that is on the TGA website. It's all redacted. It only has the batch numbers on it. I have a lot more to add to this, but with the time constraints, I'll ask this question. What is the reason we can't get these jabs halted and have a transparent investigation into them? Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll take that as rhetorical. Tracy Smith. Tracy Smith. Going. Tracy Smith. Nope. Okay, Leonie Lundy. Thank you. The public gallery doesn't interact with the council meeting. So I said it would be dealt with in the debate. Thank you.
I did ask to speak specifically to that agenda item C250214. I would prefer to actually speak when that item is up.
I will bring that item to the front of the meeting because I think the majority of people in the public gallery are here for that item. So it will be the first item on our agenda. Okay. So I've given everyone the opportunity to speak now because I think it's going to make the meeting flow better.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you to the Chair, the Mayor and Council for the opportunity to speak to this item. I trust the basic rationale for our motion has been covered sufficiently in my proposer statement delivered to the AGME and as emailed to you all yesterday. I'd like to respond now to the relevant officer's comments and recommendation. Both parts 1 and 2 of the motion were carried at the AGME and as legally required need to be brought to this or to an OCM. It is therefore concerning that the Mayor has joined other Perth South West Metro Alliance mayors in preempting a council decision and co-signed a letter from the PSWMA to Deputy PM and Minister for Defence Richard Marles in an attempt to handball responsibility for coordinating the requested public meeting, as if a government department, especially Defence, is going to do this. I suggest it's naive to think that it falls within their purview. Having a spokesperson from Defence and/or Defence ensuring a qualified and knowledgeable representative from ASA participate in a public forum is quite different to Defence taking on a coordinating role as PSWMA requested. It could be perceived as an attempt to push any action further down the track or side rail it, especially as government public communications are about to be gagged when an election is called. Of equal concern is the letter stipulates a regional public forum, undermining the relevant individual Perth South West Metro Council decisions and elector wishes. The City of Fremantle officer's comment and recommendation raises this same concern. Cockburn and Rockingham councils are yet to consider their relevant AGM carried motions. This will happen at their 11th and 25th of March OCMs respectively. They should have a say as to how many meetings would be considered appropriate and manageable within the region. If, e.g., Rockingham and Cockburn elect to hold their own meetings, what right does the Perth South West Metro Alliance or this Fremantle Council have to undermine this and to determine how many meetings would be appropriate? Dare I say this is not and would not be a good look. I suggest, given the anxiety around the lack of Defence social licence for AUKUS, the constant reminders in parliamentary hearings, the more that needs to be done in this regard, and the recent PSWMA report read the same, it would be incredulous if an appropriate ASA person in charge of nuclear stewardship and someone with technical expertise would not be available to attend 2 or more 2-hour meetings, as has been inferred by the officer in his comments. It is, after all, covered by their taxpayer-funded salary. Similarly, I suggest that it is in APANZ's interest to be able to clarify outstanding issues pertaining to nuclear waste aspects of AUKUS prior to the next round of approvals needed for the waste facility. Our position remains, as per the motion, carried at the AGME. That is, Fremantle will hold a meeting here, and as suggested in my former proposed statement, the consideration be given to inviting possibly East Fremantle.
Thanks, Leonie. I'll have to wrap you up there. Thanks. Adrian Glamorgan.
Hiya, thank you. Adrian Glamorgan from Whitegum Valley. I'm I'm speaking about C2 50214, where there is Leonie just spoke of it also. There's a multiplicity of issues that need to be addressed by any public consultation that can't be squeezed just into one meeting. I don't know whether councillors appreciate how complex the arrangements and consequences of this proposal to expand the US presence in Cockburn Sound really entails. And it's a matter of respect to the council that it's able to access a wide source of information, not just restrict to the trip that went to San Diego, which was not inclusive of all the voices that needed to be heard from that place. The needs of communities closer and further away from the American expansion of a nuclear submarine base at Garden Island would benefit from different forums. Our needs here in Fremantle are different to the sorts of concerns that the community has immediately next to the base and further away. It's a different focus. Now, East Fremantle considers it wants a briefing, which is not yet a consultation or a sharing or a meeting where the Australian Submarine Agency can hear from the community response. At the December meeting of the community meeting Politics in the Pub, they said, we need to listen more. But the kind of occasion that the Southwest Metro Alliance is creating, I suspect, is not one that is about listening, but about telling. It's a bit like a mining company telling Juukan Gorge people that how good iron ore is without listening to their concerns. Social licence is not something to be ticked off. It's a dialogue. And I don't believe you've been provided enough information about the governance consequences and the burden of responsibilities that you'll be required to do. And I think you should find out now rather than later. And I think you would want that as well. There really just hasn't been enough information given. Now, the expense is a necessary cost of genuine public consultation and should have been factored into the proposal to expand the US presence in Cockburn Sound. Make no mistake, you may think that many of us are talking about AUKUS and Australian submarines and the dangers of nuclear. Whether or not we get nuclear submarines is immaterial. What the Americans and the British get, whether we've given them the $700 million or not, is an expansion of a nuclear base. And the experience of San Diego is that has severe governance and environmental impacts. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. I'll get the CEO to respond to both of those questions. So I think in relation to 1 or 2 meetings and PSMWA writing to the Deputy Prime Minister.
Through the Chair. First, in response to the resolution passed at the annual general electors meeting. So the City is considering, or Council is considering that tonight. We have contemplated through the Perth South West Metropolitan Alliance how we might conduct those meetings. I think in the report we did suggest maybe one regional meeting to be considered. In conversations since, we have considered whether a north and a south end meeting might be appropriate as well. So at the moment, it's probably all in play in the discussion on how it might be undertaken. I think Council will respond to that a little bit tonight. And at this point, we've had no further conversation with the defence industry in setting that up. We're still just trying to work out how we might deal with the motions at the relevant councils themselves. I think secondly, on the letter from Perth South West letter that was sent, I think maybe a week and a half ago or so, was really just a reiteration of a previous conversation that the Alliance had with the Deputy Prime Minister in relation to conducting some information and consultation sessions in Perth to discuss the AUKUS Alliance because it was being left to local government and we didn't think that was satisfactory at the time. So that was really just a reiteration of that process. Yes, every local government will need to consider the motions moved at their own meetings and work out how they want to deal with that. And that is absolutely what is happening with the City of Fremantle tonight.
I might add to that with the letter. I mean, I think what you've seen from local governments, and I think it's been a fairly frank piece of feedback to the federal government, is we don't own the question of licence to operate. The federal government owns the question of licence to operate. So we need to see, and this is the letter to Richard Marles, we need to see the federal government showing up in communities and talking about licence to operate. So it's all part of the same effort. It certainly came out through the politics in the pub, I think that Adrian referenced, that our community want to speak to the people who are making these decisions. Local government is the most accessible level of government, as demonstrated by tonight, but we're not the decision makers on this one. Elizabeth Megros.
Good evening, everyone. I live in South Fremantle and have been so for a very long time. My questions relate to the ever-increasing reduction of services for our rates. Under the disguise of increasing the dismal tree canopy coverage of the city, Council created a new tree policy that the property line pruning has been removed. Given you're unwilling or unable to clarify the implications for ratepayers in relation to this changed tree policy, and given I didn't ask for a quotation of the new tree policy, and I still don't understand where ratepayers who do not wish to have council-owned tree canopies on their property stand, would you confirm that the following interpretation based on your answer is correct? A council person decides if a given property owner is to accommodate council tree canopies and how much of it, and according to that assessment, the ratepayers will or will not be receiving pruning past the property line through rates. Ratepayers who, for whatever reason, wish to have no overhanging tree branches onto their properties are forced to pay themselves for the removal or the pruning of overhanging branches, or are forced to pay for additional roof plumbing services, or are forced to carry out pruning themselves if they cannot afford the extra expense, or are forced to be plunged into darkness in winter, which depends on the circumstances, or are forced not to be able to grow the things they want in their garden. Given that I told you that council tree branches are hitting both feeder lines across my property, would you confirm whether my property is safe and has been so during winter? Unrelated questions. Where is the discussion on the lost motion of the annual report, as well as on the unacceptable presentation of the annual report information? What was the total cost to ratepayers of producing the above annual report presentation document, the hard copy as well as the online versions? Who is responsible on the council for the decisions that are taken? Explain how and why the City of Fremantle website data is stored on computers when reading the Fremantle blog by Roel Lupus. Thank you.
Okay, I will go with the tree question to the Director Infrastructure. I think we've dealt with the accessibility one, and I'm sorry I didn't understand the Roel Lupus one, so maybe just send an email to the CEO on that one if you want to. Director Infrastructure. Do you want to send it to Ryan? Just sort out the microphones. There's always one. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. In respect to council-owned trees, we do have a policy, and council officers are responsible for assessing the trees and will prune or look to the trees where we feel there is an issue. We would not advocate that residents start to trim council trees. If there is a particular issue that you're concerned about, if you pass on your details and your address, we'd be more than happy to come and have a look and just make sure there wasn't a dangerous situation that we needed to deal with.
Thank you. So perhaps send an email through. Mei Ring Chen.
Good evening, Mei Ring from Beaconsfield. I would like to comment on your decisions on point 1 of the third motion. You say in the agenda that the city was following directions from agencies of government and chief medical officer and so on. What about your responsibility? If someone tells you to kill John Doe and you do it, who do you think is the police going to arrest? The direction was implemented with a harsh mandate upon the resident of Fremantle. In the meantime, we all know that social distancing, mask wearing, lockdown, skewed PCR tests, and the need of a vaccine passport for a vaccine that doesn't work to enter venues were mainly made up by Dr. Fauci, who was pardoned by Joe Biden all the way back to 2014. By accepting the pardon, he admitted guilt. Remember, those who suffered the most were the children. Now would be a good time to apologize to the residents of Fremantle and admit that mistakes were made. It is too easy to pass on the responsibility. Just think about your own family, your parents, your children and grandchildren. We don't know what the long-term effect will be with the contaminated injections. It could affect many generations. To point 2 of the third motion, your mandate has caused a division in the community. Families broke up, some may never be reunited again, and people were encouraged to dob each other in. Sounds very much like the Third Reich or Communist China during Cultural Revolution. Did you, after all, feel guilty about it? Is that why you created the award-winning Neighbor to Neighbor program? So somehow you were able to make funds available to pull this off, but not to refund some of the rates we paid. I do not believe that we are a small minority. There are those who refused the injection in the first place, those who took them to keep their jobs and food on the table. Then we have those who were injured and maimed, and those who lost loved ones after they received the injections, and those who have finally woken up to the scam. I say that this is a sizable group. And just to let you know, in Kansas, the court case has started against Pfizer for lying to people about the safety and efficacy of the injections.
Thank you. I'm sure some of that will be covered in the debate. Dominic Mimner. Sure.
Hi, I'm Tracy. I'm a resident at Fremantle. I just want to make a statement here today, and I haven't really planned it, that I hope echoes in this chamber and outside of this, out of this forum. What I'm going to do is actually read from a letter that I got in regards to being mandated to be vaccinated for COVID. I have had 3 under the mandates. I live now with pericarditis and a whole constellation of physical health issues. I was rushed to hospital last week, again with what they thought was a heart attack. That's my 4th ED presentation now. So I just want you to hear what was in the letter that I got from the government, from the state government. Despite being injured, the first one, I got a paresthesia on my left side. Despite my injury, they mandated me to have another one under the vaccine safety assessment team, which was also reported to WAVAS. It is an offence, and I quote, to fail to comply with the booster directions without a reasonable excuse, punishable by a fine of up to $20,000. Furthermore, this may be considered as an act of misconduct consistent with the WA Health Discipline Policy and the CARS disciplinary guidelines. During this restriction period, you are not entitled to be paid for the period of time that you are legally unable to attend work due to refusing to get your booster vaccination. And so on it goes. Yours sincerely, Dr. Aresh Anwar, who at the time was the Chief Executive for CARS. my statement here is really just that people are aware that those mandates have had a significant impact, and that if local government has any capacity moving forward in the future to hold state government to account for the impact that these types of mandates could have on people in the event of a state emergency, then I just hope that this story comes to mind. I'm not alone. The vaccine injured do occur. I didn't take out a workers' health comp claim. I thought, I don't want to be one of them, you know, maybe this is going to go away. And actually I haven't had a flare-up for a year, so I felt like I was getting better. My workplace moved to Murdoch. I lost my free parking that I had here in Fremantle, so I still work for the health department. So I thought I'd start riding my bike to work. Within 2 weeks, I was rushed to hospital with a suspected heart attack. So my capacity to continue to do cardio exercise probably is off the table now. So for me, the grief of having to let go of my netball, and you know, it's just an ongoing thing.
Tracy, that's 3 minutes, so
Sorry.
thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah.
Dominique Mimner.
Dominique from Beaconsfield, sorry. I've had quite an emotional day, and I really thank Tracy for coming tonight. A friend of mine lost her ex-husband today, and the younger daughter found him. He suddenly died. He'd had a heart attack. And it just resonated me because my husband's double jabbed. My daughter's double jabbed. And I just thought, what if that was my daughter finding her dad today? I wrote this, but I'm not going to read it because there's no point. Writing to the TGA is not going to do anything. It's really feeble. You know how long we've been fighting this. How many people in this room are here for motion, is it item 14? How many people in the room are here for item 14? We are not a small community. This is not, we told you we went to federal. We told you we went to state government. We've got nothing left but local government. We're not asking you to make decisions on vaccines. We're asking you to present evidence to the people that need to hear this. It's happening in America. It's coming here. Trump got more support because he endorsed Robert J.F. Kennedy. And what they wanted to see Robert J.F. Kennedy do was to stop the injection. Because excess death rates are through the roof everywhere in the world, not just here, the whole world. And we want to know why people are dying. We want to know why people are not well. Stop trying to undermine us, saying we're a small concerned community. We're not. There are loads of people out there. Just because they're not in this room tonight doesn't mean they don't exist. This Port Hedland motion is happening all over Australia. And people, this last electors meeting got 150,000, over 150,000 views on Twitter. The world is watching us. Let's do something about it. Don't send a letter to the TGA. The TGA are the ones that hurt us. They didn't even look at the injections. They went off the proof of the FDA. They didn't even do any testing. These people are 96% funded from Big Pharma. Please, put the motion through in its entirety. Please.
Thank you, Dominique. All right, I've got one more. I've got one more speaker that I'm aware of, and that's Peter Kerr. Righty, you're not on my list, but maybe you're on the other list. Maybe we'll finish. Peter, do you mind if we finish with the AGM people first? Yeah, sure. Sure, come up. It's Sally Price, is it?
Dr. Sally Price, ethical medical doctor 6162, over 30 years of experience providing due diligence to the Freo Council, who are yet again given the opportunity to be heroes by preventing further harm and future harm by educating and informing the community, health practitioners and businesses regarding the DNA contamination which is now demonstrated to lead to turbo cancers, deaths and infertility. You can also demonstrate democracy by acting on behalf of the community where state and federal government and the TGA have failed. The TGA, of course, over 90% funded by Big Pharma and gifted $45 million by Pfizer and Moderna in the last few years. There is no downside to this minimal effort, minimal cost request from us. Freo Council could be seen as heroes versus being on the wrong side of history yet again. Councillors do have a duty of care regarding the health of the community, and it's entirely appropriate that they are scrutinised on that. There is a groundswell of change in new scientific information. The David Declaration is now international and signed by over 3,600 scientists, doctors, academics, health practitioners, professors and lawyers in 46 countries at this count. There's a new study from Belgium on deaths in nursing homes, where the most vaccinated people have the most likely chance of death. The West Australian recently wrote regarding the 17-year low in birth rate in WA, a drop of 13.5%. This cannot be explained by FIFO and cost of living crisis. In the US, RFK Jr. has taken over the HHS and is stringently looking at vaccines and informed consent. Of course, we've known from Solomon Asch and Stanley Milgram's work in the 50s and 60s in their attempts to explain the psychology of genocide, that it is only the minority of people who are capable of acting with their conscience and against social norms. Fremantle, hence, is lucky to have such a group of highly experienced, credentialed, incredible health professionals prepared to continue to speak out on this topic. It is painful for all of us to be right too early, using our ethics, integrity and compassion to speak out at huge personal cost in the face of bureaucrats and councillors who won't read the 6 letters, the original data or the room. It took Prime Minister 70 years to acknowledge thalidomide in 2023, apparently the biggest medical disaster ever with 10,000 children affected. The jabs have likely led to an estimated 20 million deaths globally. Worse in Australia, with the mandates and psychological nudge units for coercion put in place for the unwary. I again request Freo Council act along the lines of the PHM and prevent further harms in the community, like many other councils nationally. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I believe that does bring us to the end of the AGM statements, questions. So, Peter, thank you for waiting.
Good, thank you, Mayor, councillors and staff, officers. Thanks for your time. My name's Pete Kerr. I live on Colley Street and I'm here to commend the Mayor for her motion to investigate making Colley Street one way. And I'm also here to encourage the council to support that motion and to perhaps be even, shall I say, bold in approach. Colley Street is a great street. We love it living there, but it is the main thoroughfare between Market Street and Esplanade. It deserves to be one of the great boulevards or the thoroughfares of Fremantle. Sadly, at the moment, it has run into, disrepair. There are a bunch of reasons for that, but I think the one-way proposal would be a great way of, stepping forward to, addressing the state of that street. I think importantly, it would make it more accessible, potentially, with widening the northern side of the street, the footpath. There are many days where, we witness people, with disabilities, in wheelchairs, etc., struggling to get along the footpaths. I think accessibility would be greatly improved with a one-way dynamic. We've already inadvertently had one-way in Colley Street for quite a while when we had the water court pipes and the gas pipe work. It was one way for quite a long time and everyone got along fine. So I think it's a good test case. I guess, vacant properties, trying to address the elephant in the room, vacant properties are part of the problem in that street. It is encouraging, some pretty unseemly sort of public behaviour, and it's a pretty confronting place for all of tourists to come to. So my bold suggestion / question, I don't know what it is, but in my day life, I'm an energy advisor. I know that Western Power has struggled for a number of years to find space for upgrades to the network. I know Betty's Burgers, for example, were wanting to go from gas to electricity. They were struggling to get the increased electricity volume from the network. The Point Street development also struggling with where do they place a large transformer room. So as EVs, as businesses move from gas to electricity, the demand for electricity will increase and that will put more strain on the network. So you'll probably at some stage need a reasonable substation or a reasonable upgrade to the network. It seems to me that Western Power should be encouraged to negotiate with the landowner, the significant landowner on Colley Street, who has done nothing with those properties for 5 years and now letting them go into disrepair. Perhaps Western Power can break the deadlock with that owner to utilise some of that land for an upgraded substation, enclose it in a basement or a ground floor development, and then perhaps turn it over to the state or the council for rent to build to rent or student housing, something with a public interest. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. I have noticed that remaining councillors have arrived. So councillors Mofflin, Lang and Thompson, do you have any disclosures of interest in relation to tonight's agenda? Councillor Mofflin?
Yeah, thank you. I've got a disclosure in regards to item 19, an impartiality interest, as I am a member of a political party.
Thanks, Councillor Mofflin. We'll get you the paperwork. Councillors? All good. All right. Petitions, deputations and presentations. I'm not aware of any. So do I have a mover for the confirmation of minutes from the last meeting? I haven't received. It was, I believe it was denied. It hasn't come across my desk. So I think the timing was the issue. Can I maybe go to the Manager of Governance for a bit more on that?
Thank you. Through the Chair, we did receive a deputation request. However, it wasn't received within the timeframe that we usually do acknowledge them. So, yep, unfortunately.
Adrian, I haven't accepted a deputation tonight because I wasn't aware of it up to now. So we're happy to consider it for a future meeting. I'm sure it will come across my desk after tonight. And we do have meetings every couple of weeks. Okay. Do I have a mover for the confirmation of the minutes? Councillor Williamson-Wong, seconded by Councillor Kamada. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Do we have any elected member communication? Councillor Williamson-Wong?
Sorry, I had not given notice of this before. I just thought that I would note that we've had the Citizen of the Year award since our last meeting, I believe, and that it was a great night and we got to celebrate all of the incredible community members in Fremantle. It was really nice to sit in a room and hear about all of the different people who'd been nominated and the very diverse and great things that they're doing in our city. where they see that there might be an opportunity for change and they're just out there to get it. So I thought I would just recognise them this evening while we're in council. So the Shawlan Garlett Award, is that right? Was awarded to Clive Morrison, who is a member of our Reconciliation Action Plan group, our RAP. The Active Citizenship Award was given to the Hilton Precinct Group with the new conveners Emma and Danny. The Young Citizen was given to Rosie Shute for their work in creating safe and accessible spaces for young adults from diverse backgrounds. The Senior Citizen was awarded to Robert Chapman for his countless hours of volunteer work, especially at the Fremantle Men's Community Shed. And our Citizen of the Year this year was Ros D'Souza, who I'm sure many of us know, for her big contribution to the Fremantle art scene over many years, including the Street Gallery project and the Outside the Box Gallery in the Woodson's Arcade.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Wong. Perhaps I could add to that is you can nominate Citizen of the Year at any time, and we do appreciate community nominations coming forward at any time of the year. It's all on the website. Councillor Graham.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, look, I've got a question on behalf of a resident in Beaconsfield, Mr Fayala, at 37 Curedale Street. Before I ask the question, I just want to give a bit of context to it. He's quite well known to the Parks team. He lives on the corner of Leafroy and Curedale, and he has a grove of council trees that overhang his property. There's about 2 that are about 5 metres high, which aren't a problem, but he's got about 5 that are up in the 30-metre mark, and they are constantly dropping branches, dropping leaves, and it's all flowing into his property, therefore filling his gutters, filling his yard. I was down there on Sunday and he'd cleaned the gutters out on Friday, and Sunday his whole backyard was covered with leaves again, and we're not even into autumn, are we? Not quite. So anyway, he's been on to me and the council officers. He's extremely frustrated about the responses he is getting from the council, and also the private contractor didn't treat him all that well when they went out there to have a look at it as well. Anyway, that's a bit of context. The question is, and I think it's already been asked once again tonight, if he or any residents has a responsibility to main trees on his property that impact on his neighbours, then why doesn't that apply to council trees that impact on private properties?
Councillor Graham, were you expecting that to be answered again?
Personally, I'd like the answer in the minutes for the next meeting, please, so that I could then show Mr Fayala the response. He doesn't speak very good English, and I communicate with him very well, even though I don't speak Polish.
Good job. Councillor Lang.
Thank you. Brief update on the recent Perth Metropolitan Alliance NRM meeting that we held in East Fremantle. Just a couple of updates and some projects we are working on. The coordinated fox monitoring trapping project across the region is gaining a bit of momentum. That's a project amongst 6 local governments. As I mentioned before, we've tagged the foxes. We know that they're going across all local governments, and we know they're having the most impact in Coburn, recently wiping out the snake-necked turtle. So we're now working together and with Lottery West to try and ramp up efforts for tracking and monitoring the foxes in the region. And similar to that, trying to use economies of scale by coordinating a group purchase for our tree canopy monitoring across the region. It's still a work in progress, and the CEOs and technical directors are still speaking on that item at the moment. I'm hopeful we can get an outcome on that soon. And our next meeting will be held here in Fremantle on May 15. All welcome to attend. I know Ben and Jenny come along a bit, but you're all welcome to come along.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Lorver?
Yeah, since our last meeting, I've had the pleasure of attending the Urban Forest Conference at Murdoch University at their new amazing building there, and it's just an amazing campus as well. And just wanted to share a few things that Councillor Graham may not agree with or appreciate, but it was a great conference. The ACT actually has a director of tree protection. That's their job, and they do a lot of work in that space. All trees on public land are actually protected in the ACT, They even protect dead native trees because that provides habitat for other, birds and bugs and things. And in the planning world, in the ACT, developers enter canopy contribution agreements. Now, I appreciate that's a different world than Western Australia over here, but there's just some exciting things that are going on. Another breakout session that I attended talked about tree risk. And, while basically all trees do pose some risk, the overall level of risk from trees is very, very small. And the studies that have, measured this or looked at this, the overall risk from trees and branches falling is extremely low. So there's people out there studying the effects of trees and the potential for harm, and it's all coming back that it's very, very low. But one of the most interesting, sessions that I thought was one of the most interesting had to do with the town of Bassendean, because they implemented a policy that we're going to be a very similar policy to the one that we'll be considering here in the next couple of weeks or months. And a few of the takeaways from the staff there about their implementation were really, really spot on, and things that we should take note if we choose to adopt it. And one of the things, I won't go into great detail about it, but one of the things that really stood out to me was the staff there really recommended doing a comprehensive survey of your canopy before you implement the policy. It helps with a lot of the further down the track monitoring and also baseline kind of just data. So those are some of the things that I took away from the conference. It was a great time, and really going to go to the next one as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lorber. Anything further, councillors? All righty. Well, we will go to, as I promised, the AGME report first. So do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation? Sorry, I have jumped ahead quite quickly. So this is receiving the minutes of the AGME, etc. Councillor Moughlin, seconded by Councillor Archibald. I notice we've got a couple of amendments on the agenda, but did anyone wish to speak before we go to those amendments? Councillor Lorber?
Can I just request, because these are very different motions, that maybe we split these up one at a time and debate the amendments and so forth one at a time?
Yeah, we will debate the amendments one at a time. At the end of that, we can vote on the items one at a time also. All right, do we want to go straight to those amendments then? Councillor Sullivan? Yeah.
Thank you. And before we do that, there is one part of the electors meeting that I did want to talk about, because it's not actually dealt with in the recommendations as such. And that is in relation to the South Beach change and toilet facilities. The community was obviously requesting like an independent review of the whole process. I'm not, and I don't think anybody in this chamber is convinced that we need an independent review, but I did want to speak to the fact that any major project that we undertake, there would always be, I think, an expectation that we always do some sort of a lessons learnt process internally, and that if there are lessons to be learnt, that they would be discussed with the elected body, from senior management. So in relation to South Beach, I mean, it has been a difficult process for our staff. It's been a difficult process for elected members, and it's been a difficult process for community with a number of...
Councillor Sullivan, I'm just going to interrupt you and ask the public gallery to remain silent. Thanks.
There have been a number of, periods of inconvenience. We all understand that. We all know that sometimes happens, whether or not they needed to be, as long as they have been and the like, are the sorts of things that I would imagine that there is an opportunity to kind of go through a process and do a bit of a lessons learned for that. I would also expect, because the project involved many aspects, a little bit like this building as well. It involved aspects of trying to set a brief in the first place for what were the long-term needs of change rooms, toilets, the changing place facility, the kiosk in the longer term, And we did a whole place plan exercise as well for the entire beach, not just for the toilets and the like. And so there are a number of elements that came together over almost a decade in terms of getting to the point of building new toilets. And so I think some of those aspects do need to be talked about in a process with the elected body and staff, and to try and ascertain, where we did things well and where we might have wished we could do things a little bit different if we had our time over again. It's not a witch hunt. It's not any of those sort of things. I know in architecture, you pretty well do that with every building. There's always something.
Can I just, sorry to interrupt you again. If you want to have a chat, really welcome to pop outside and have a chat. But while you're in the council meeting, really appreciate if you could stay silent and listen to the elected members when they're speaking. Thanks, Councillor Sullivan. No, it's happening in the second row back here. Thank you. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. So there were a number of processes that led to the ultimate contract and building the building. And they include whether or not to keep the old building, whether or not to reutilise the old building for uses that might have been the new toilets, or might have been some other use as well. And then there were the questions that, obviously we all remember going through the process. Do we keep a tree that then restricts the amount of area that we can build new toilets on, or do we let a single tree go that gives us more flexibility, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was very complicated. And so I would imagine the process of reviewing those sorts of things to really see if there are better ways for us to do things into the future are important. So I asked the CEO, I guess, through you, Madam Mayor, whether there is a process set in place, and my understanding that there is from when we did this building. Is there a process that is set in place, and is there that sort of expectation of internal conversation, review, lessons learned, can we do better into the future, and having that conversation with the elected body so that we're aware of those things as well.
CEO?
Through the chair, officers do consider lessons learnt from major construction projects that occur within the city. We can do so through the Audit and Risk Committee, of course, and I know that there is a conversation already being had about how we might improve processes moving forward, so happy to bring that forward to an Audit and Risk Committee at some point.
Thank you. Councillor Lorver.
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions about the what's contained here in motion 1 and some of the events around that. First of all, from what I understand, on East Frio held a AGM towards the end of January. So did Coburn around the 30th of January. Then we had our AGM on the 3rd of February. Rockingham held one on the 6th of February. And then 3 days later, there was a letter that was sent to all of us, signed by all the mayors of the Perth Southwest Metropolitan Alliance, sent to Richard Marles, that was drafted on Sunday the 9th. So I just was curious when that meeting was held of the PSMWA, of the mayors, and the decision to draft and send that letter with its contents. And then also, if we haven't read the letter, I'm just kind of curious if the statement in there of rather than each council organizing separate briefings, that the defense or whoever takes a proactive role in coordinating a regional meeting, whether that goes to odds or at least has the perception of going to odds with the statement earlier in the letter where, each council will assess motions independently. And if that request to just hold a regional meeting by the defense or whomever over there might be considered to preempt our discussion tonight. I'm just curious about, one, when the meeting was held and those statements in the letter.
Sorry, is that a question to the CEO? So, look, I think, I guess I'll speak on the item now if I'm speaking. The PSMWA mayors and CEOs met with Richard Marles in, I'm going to say November last year, and very clearly delivered the message that we were getting from our community that the ASA and other agencies of the Australian government needed to show up in our communities and have public engagement. And I don't think anyone would walk away with any ambiguity other than the idea that would be a two-way engagement. And probably, I think it's fair to say, there's been some fairly frank feedback that engagement hasn't been occurring at the level that we would hope to see for our community to date. And I think what you're referring to is a follow-up letter to that meeting, which basically reconfirmed that we want to have meetings. I don't think the question is the number of meetings. I think the question is, are they prepared to show up to any meetings in the region? And that's really what we're advocating for. So whether it's 6 in the different 6 local government areas, 1 in Fremantle, 1 in Rockingham, it's a moot point if they don't show up to any of them. So I guess my assessment would be this has been part of an ongoing campaign that PSMWA have had with the Submarine Agency, with Richard Marles and with a number of other players in that field to try and get them to come to town and have a conversation with our communities, because we don't think local government is the appropriate place for social licence to operate to be prosecuted in terms of us not being the decision-making authority. I was probably going to speak on the item more broadly, but maybe I will leave it to the amendments. Councillor Archibald.
Yes, thank you. Given that we were talking about this particular topic, I might just move that the amendment that I have already circulated to people.
Yeah, so that's on the screen. I'm happy to second that.
So just in speaking to it, I do agree that, as has already been said, that there is a real need for more information and there is a real need for more dialogue with the community, and that's been very clearly said. So the amendment basically deals with the issue. We do recognise that we would need at least 1 meeting in our region, or our area rather, and people further to the south, like Kwinana, Rockingham, down that way, would probably prefer to have their own meeting down in that district as well. The other thing is that issues that they may have may be quite local in some part, and likewise we may have local issues up here as well as general issues across the whole spectrum of what AUKUS is about. So the amendment really just says with at least 1 meeting to be held elsewhere in the region and at least 1 to be held in the Fremantle area. This doesn't mean only 1 for each. I think it'd be great if we could just get the ball rolling and at least have a meeting in each region and then see how we go. So I'll move that amendment, and it's been seconded. So.
Thanks, Councillor Archibald. Just in seconding that, I think what I'd say is we are getting some traction as operating as a region, and I think it's important, like Councillor Lang said, when we do things like that don't get easily segmented by local government boundaries, that we do act as a region. So, I'm not quite sure where the line of questioning is going about how the South West Metropolitan Alliance advocating on behalf of the region to get more engagement, but I do think we are getting more traction rather than individual local governments going out one by one by acting at a regional level, and it's much the same reasons why we have WALGA and other organisations where something has a broader impact or benefit. WALGA jumps in and advocates for it, and this is a regional group advocating to get more information into our region. Councillor Lorber?
I fully support this amendment that Councillor Archibald put forward, and I want to thank you for doing that and the Mayor for seconding it. I think this gets us a lot closer to what the intent was at our AGM. I think having these discussions is critical, and as the government closest to the people, sometimes things fall on our shoulders, but given AUKUS is, a $300 billion program, hopefully they can at least throw some at what is a critical, aspect of it, which is, building that social license. And I absolutely agree, Rockingham is going to have very different issues than folks in Fremantle may have, but there'll be a lot of the same issues as well. So, you know, I'm very happy that this was put forward, and I hope it gets support from the council.
Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thank you. Yeah, echoing Councillor Lorver in thanking Deputy Mayor Archibald for bringing this forward. I am very supportive of this amendment. I think, yes, we really need our federal government to come on board and help us get better communication. They are the people who made the decision. We weren't able to influence the decision of whether or not this project is happening. And as Adrian pointed out, there's a very complex governance structure that goes on for this project to go forward. But I think, you know, in the PSWMA report, it was clear that local governments are here to help our communities obtain the information that they might have, or the answers to the questions that they might have. And this project will no doubt affect all of us. So I'm looking forward to this meeting and helping our communities to bring that information forward and to move forward together. It was interesting to listen to the ASIO briefing this week. I don't know if anyone caught it, but noting that this is a significant, this is going to have significant impacts in our community, and the need for us to be able to work together rather than against each other to get better information. So thank you.
Councillor Lang.
Yeah, this is a really good amendment, and we had a similar debate about an event we were holding for the Environmental Forum. It was in East Fremantle, and we're getting a lower attendance because it's the northern end of the region. So to the intent of the motion, having an event in Fremantle, but then advocating to have a separate one somewhere else, we're going to get a higher attendance. So it's a great amendment.
Thanks, Councillor Lang. Councillor Archibald, did you want to close on the amendment? Right, yep, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. I did have one question just in terms of Fremantle area, whether you really mean City of Fremantle or whether you mean the greater Fremantle area. I mean, I think if it was something that was, you know, Coburn, Melville, East Freo, I don't really mind the location. So I just wanted you to answer that in your closing. But I do support this because I think that, you know, the questions that people in the community are having are getting longer and longer, and that's because the government and the Submarine Authority simply haven't been out in the community trying to adequately respond to the types of concerns that are occurring. And those concerns are getting significantly greater and significantly more diverse. Not the least of which is whether or not we can even have an alliance with the United States under the current authoritarian regime that is developing there, and whether or not we want to see another so-called shared base, such as Pine Gap or in Exmouth, where the relationship between the countries really is likely, very likely, to significantly deteriorate in terms of having cooperation in any sense militarily. Where, you know, obviously suddenly people that were seemingly on the same side are seemingly not on the same side anymore. So I very much think that, as has been stated quite clearly publicly, this is not a one-off conversation. This will need to be an extensive conversation, and it now needs to be not just with the Submarine Authority and those dealing with implementing AUKUS. It actually now obviously needs to be with our government representatives at the federal level to really start considering whether we've actually gone the wrong direction. Perhaps sticking with the French right now would have been the right solution. I don't know. But I do support the amendment, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Looks like ranging all over everywhere. Councillor Archibald, did you want to close about the region?
I'll just answer the question. Yes, I totally agree that acting as a region, it's certainly been very beneficial through the Environment Group, and I would hope it delivers some benefit by working as a region on this issue. That doesn't preclude separate meetings just because we might decide we want one. The Fremantle area, I'm trying to be polite, that we are a region and we want one up in the northern area and one in the south. But to be frank, I feel the Fremantle community will be the most popular part of that meeting. Perhaps some of the East Fremantle people, a lot of the Hammy Hill people in the area to the west. So I can't imagine it'll be anywhere else but in Fremantle, but I'm trying to be polite and not prescriptive. So I feel that we'll see what comes back from the Southwest group.
Thanks, Councillor Archibald. So I'll put the amendment in total to a vote, this amendment on the screens. All those in favour of the amendment? And that's unanimous. So we're back to the item as amended. So that's motion 1 dealt with as far as I know. Motion 2. Councillor Kamada, I believe you had an amendment on this part.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor Fitzharding. I've got notes. I'm probably going to go all over the place here, but I'll be as succinct as... Oh, yeah.
It's just up on the screen now. Do we have a seconder for this one? Councillor Lorber.
Remove it first, yeah. Go for it. my apologies. I jumped the gun. So you want me, I can speak to that now? Thank you. Yeah, look, thank you again for those who have come in for this item tonight. It's obviously, they're very passionate about it. You know, that goes without saying. And as an elected member, I feel a responsibility to represent anything that any community member, even if it's one solitary community member that brings something forward, I think we have a responsibility to listen, to respectfully, and then it's up to the council what they decide to do. In this case, we have a section of the community that has concerns in relation to the side effects of COVID. It's not the jab. Sorry.
Thank you.
I hadn't finished.
It's not a two-way discussion.
I had not finished my
I
sentence.
can't.
So thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Kamada, I'll just hold you there.
Yep.
Just to be clear, once public question time is finished, I really would appreciate it if the gallery could stay silent so elected members can debate. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Kamada.
Yeah, I hadn't finished my sentence. I said the side effects of COVID vaccines. I was going to say the jab, as you say. And these people have been impacted, whether it's been in their health or work matters. I myself remember going through that period, and it did affect my family in various ways. So I have sympathy, you know, for your situations. What has been asked for in their motion, my amendment does not include the full list that's been requested, but I hope it's a start. And you'd expect that evidence-based with professional peer review and of any type of medication or vaccinations or anything in that field, you'd think it would be a given that it's ongoing. So I don't think it's a big ask to send a copy of the motion to the list that I've included in the amendment. And I hope that my fellow councillors can support this simple request. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lorber as seconder.
I'll wait to hear any debate and respond or comment later.
Sure. Councillors, on this amendment that is now on your screen. Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, thank you. I do support the amendment, largely for the reasons that Councillor Kamada just explained. But I did also want to essentially say why I wouldn't go any further than what Councillor Kamada has proposed. And the essence of it is that notwithstanding that the community have presented a range of concerns, and I don't know what other elected members have done in terms of reading the letters and then going to the links and the like, but I certainly have where I can. I haven't read everything, but I have read a significant amount of it. I've also tried to find out what the town of Port Hedland have been doing and the like. So I like Councillor Kamada, and I'm assuming everybody else I do take the concerns seriously. I know plenty of people in the community who have some degree and sometimes significant degree of concern about the whole processes of vaccinations and the like. And you wouldn't be human if you didn't. I mean, I know I certainly, through the whole COVID process, my view on things changed significantly from time to time, even to the extent of, I also didn't have the first jab because of particular concerns that I was dealing with in terms of issues with my lungs at the time. So I understand, I think we all do, when we have compassion and empathy for concerns that are being raised. But I also have I think a really clear job to do as an elected member, and that is to certainly be empathetic and deal with concerns, but not to the point where I step beyond the capacity that I have as an individual to impact the sorts of changes that people are talking about. There is a real risk that local government ends up being used to do the job of the proper authorities. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a medical practitioner. I'm not charged with the responsibility to do any of those assessments and the like. There are many, many people who are. And if I was to, in my position, use my position to suggest that I knew better than them and people followed that, I would feel that was an inappropriate action for me as an elected person to take. Now, if I was fully convinced by the science that there was, a conspiracy or there was something so untoward happening, then as a private citizen, I would probably be sitting in the gallery thumping the table just like the members here tonight are. But I'm not in that position. Even after having been through a whole bunch of things, even after having heart issues, and my brother had heart issues, and I'm sure everybody else in the room might have had something that they said, well, maybe that was related to either the COVID that I've had 3 or 4 times or the injections that I've had. So, but I don't know, and I'm not in a position, and I doubt any elected member is, to go to the extent that I would start putting messages out there into the community that discredited the very people who are far more scientific, far more medically trained, and have that responsibility. And I'm not going to do that.
Thank you. Excuse me. If you need to leave, you need to leave. Okay, Dominique. Thank you. Elected members listened to you when you were speaking. It is extremely disrespectful to interrupt them now. And it is your final warning. Thank you. Councillor Kamada, did you want to close on this one, or did anyone else wish to speak? Okay. Did you wish to close? Thanks, Councillor Kamada.
I think I've covered pretty much everything. The only additional point I'll make, and sort of, I suppose, further to what Councillor Sullivan was saying, similar to the AUKUS issue, we are not the final decision makers, but it is something that we do need to consider very seriously, and we need to sometimes convey messages back, to the appropriate authorities from the grassroots level.
Okay. I'll put that one, the amendment that's on the screen, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour of the amendment? And that's unanimous. No, sorry, Councillor, and all those against? Yep, sorry. The arms went up and down quickly, and Councillor Williamson Wong. So that's carried. So we'll go back to the overall item as amended. If we don't have any further amendments, does anyone who hasn't spoken on the items enclosed in that in general wish to speak on the AGME? No. Okay. Well, I will put the recommendation to a vote. All those in favour? Hang on. Oh, yeah. Does anyone want it split, actually? I'm going back to Councillor Lorber. He wanted it before. No? We're all good? Anyone else? Nope. We're voting on it in whole. All those in favour? Yep. And that looks to be unanimous. All right. So that takes us back to the agenda. I think we've also got people here for the dog park item. So if we've dealt with the item you're interested in, you're welcome to leave. Otherwise, feel free to stay on. And by calling it the dog park, I'm definitely getting it wrong. Mills and Ware Park, dog/park item petition. Oh no, they are no longer here, actually. But we'll go back to the item as it's the agenda as it's printed in order. Thanks, everyone. All right. Do I have someone who would move the officer's recommendation for Mills and Ware? You can move it, and yeah, Councillor Williamson Wong, and seconder for that one, Councillor Graham, and Councillor Williamson Wong. Do you want to open or go to your amendment?
Can I open and move my amendment?
Yeah.
Great. Great, the amendment is on the screen. I've put forward an amendment, but I guess before, to give context to the item, I think Mills and Ware's coming to us has really highlighted the many dog conversations that have been happening in the background, and officers have been quick to tell me that whenever there's a park consultation, it's mainly around dogs. And even throughout the strategic community plan, there was a lot of kind of dog information and statistics that came forward. And I think it really highlights the need for us to review this policy. And also in conversations since this has come forward, has highlighted how contentious and emotive these conversations can get. So understandably, officers are keen to do this review once and to do it right. And so I've worked with staff to put forward this amendment that just reiterates that. Can I put the, thank you. Put forward this amendment to reiterate that the staff have already commenced working on this policy review and that it be brought back to Council for consideration before September of 2025. This is a date that I discussed with officers to make sure that it was achievable within the capacity of the staff. Because I think...
Councillor Williamson-Wong, because we're on the amendment, I'll just get a second of that. Councillor Mofflin, back to you.
Thank you. What I think is really interesting about the opportunity to bring this back for consideration, but to do the review sooner rather than later, as Ian was pointing out, is that our current policy is very simplistic in its nature. It's just a list of what's in and what's out. And I've been supportive and encouraging of officers to hopefully in this next review include a few policy statements around what we actually want to achieve with dog areas, and why, you know, as Ian was saying earlier on, there are certain factors that we take into consideration when choosing a dog area. So it would be good to have those in the policy so that members of our community can understand why some areas have been chosen or why some areas are not. So yes, that is what the amendment aims to do, but I also would like to thank the Mills and Wares, you know, petitioners in the community. I know that there's a lot of productive conversations that have gone on since the petition came to us between different users of the park, which is great to see, and also for staff for already commencing this work and having a great plan of how we're going to progress it. So that's all from me.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson-Wong. Anyone on the amendment? All right, I'll put, no, Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. So this is the amendment to bring it back for consideration before September 25, I take it. Yes, look, I'm not in favour of that. I would prefer to see that it remain the same and let the officers just do their work. Now, one of the reasons for this is, and having sat through dog debates back in bygone eras, I know exactly what it's like. Now, and I could thank you, Councillor Thompson, for nodding in agreement. if you have a dog debate a month out from a mayoral election, you will not get a clear, conscious vote in this chamber. I guarantee it. I'd put my house on it. And I would suggest that if you're going to make this a dog area and you're going to bring it back in September, Mars will just vote it in now. So anyway, I do think you've got to think about this because, you know, if you've sat through some of these things that we had to sit back in the late 90s and early 2000s, and I don't suppose the community's changed that much, to be honest. It's a very daunting, intimidating and highly emotive part of local government. So I'm just cautioning you all. I won't be supporting the amendment. Everyone can do what they like, of course. But I just think we would get a better conscious vote after the election in October, and we should just let the officers do their job, bring it back whenever it is, and deal with it then.
Councillor Lorber.
Yeah, I'm a bit kind of in the middle on this, and I just wonder if the intent of this amendment is to deal with Mills and Wares Park versus all of the parks in Fremantle, because I would be a lot more comfortable if this was just bringing that piece back by September, because there are numerous parks across Fremantle and undertaking the work to look at where dog off-lead exercise could be prohibited or allowed is a huge piece of work, and it will involve a lot of community conversations. And one thing that I've learned in my short time sitting in this chamber is that the public is very passionate, and we will want to hear from people that want to have their say. So I'm just wondering, I'll put it to the amendment in the Councillor Williams and Wong, is if this is intended to maybe just deal with one specific park, that maybe that piece is brought back and the rest can be done, as Councillor Graham said, as the staff see fit in their work.
Look, I might just get an officer comment. If this amendment has been drafted with the officers, perhaps we can just get an officer view on what their thinking is about the project and their original timelines for it anyway. Yeah, do you want to come up, Manager? You can go to the public mic if you want, or you can use this one.
Okay, thank you through the chair. I think my understanding of the intention of this was to bring Mills and Wares back as part of the whole of policy review. So the idea behind the September 25 deadline was to bring the draft policy back for review. From a process point of view, it is very difficult just to pluck one piece out. We are trying to do it holistically across the whole city. And from a process point of view, we are required to advertise it for 28 days, any change. So we'd still have to go through that process for one park as opposed to the entire city.
All right, does that help with the Councillor Mofflin? You look like you've got a question as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, a follow-up question to that, and thanks for the answer on that. So in the instance that this motion's passed and the draft, this is about the draft policy returning to council for then being able to go out for public comment. Is that the intent? Because I suppose reading this here at the moment, it says be reviewed and brought back to council. So what actual process are we going to say, what requirement is going to be coming back to council by, and it says September 25, but it's going to be at the latest August, the last meeting in August. So it's a pretty tight time frame. What are we going to see come back? And is it to kickstart the public review? I'd be interested to know.
Yeah. Thank you. Through the chair. So the intention, I understand it, was to bring the draft policy back for review by September 25 ahead of the statutory 28-day advertising period. So final endorsement would follow that. We're still working through the engagement plan at the moment as to how we actually go out to the community and engage, but there's obviously a lot of community engagement that will need to happen prior to that point.
Thanks. And maybe then just to Councillor Williams from Wong, whether there's a need to make a slight amendment to this amendment in regards to referring to the draft policy coming back, and whether it's yeah, whether that's something that needs to be included to clarify what part of the process. But I'm supportive of foreshadowing that the policy is being reviewed, but yeah, most probably need to be a little bit clearer about what the expectations are.
Okay, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. And I think, to me, that's exactly what the motion is trying to say. And Councillor Williamson may wish to add a few words, but the reality for me was reading it that yes, a draft policy would be brought back. You can't do anything with a draft policy until such time as this body has endorsed the draft policy for consultation. So we do engagement first, and then it comes back to us, presumably at the last meeting in August. We consider it. We may or may not be in a position to say we endorse it for consultation. That might take one meeting, it might take two meetings. But we would also be in a position at that time that if we wanted to progress the Mills and Wares Park issue faster than the rest of the policy, that we could probably do that if the council wanted to do that at the time. So it's still a process. It wouldn't, and I just wanted to address Councillor Graham's concerns. It'd be highly unlikely that the final decisions would be made before the October elections, because one, we would be kind of in a caretaker kind of process anyway, so we wouldn't be able to make those sort of policy decisions as far as I understand it, but the manager of governance can answer that if I'm incorrect. So the reality is, yeah, it might be a live issue at election time, but I don't think it'll be resolved until after the October elections. I did also want to just quickly say that I do support this. I am concerned that we do sometimes race ahead and make changes to parks without reviewing that in the context of both the broader use of that park, but also the context of all of the parks that might be in a particular area. So different parks in South Fremantle, for example, some are capable of being more children-friendly because they can have playgrounds, they've got enough space or whatever. Some don't have enough space for any of those sorts of things, whether they be dog exercise or playgrounds or the like, and they're very passive community meeting places in a sense, and that's about it. And others are big enough to pretty well do everything in them. So we do have those issues. But we also have a park at Mills and Wares that is in, I guess, a kind of hiatus phase. There has been a lot of conversation about changes to that park over about 5 years. And there are budgets set aside for improvements to that park. I would like us, there was an intent to perhaps review the park in the context of those budgets. Those budgets are 27-28. I would like, I'm going to propose it to the staff and through the budget process to give consideration to bringing all of those elements forward a year so that we could start the review of the park and the other elements to it, not just dogs, so that it coincides with this process that we're seeing in front of us now. Because I think that's going to be really important. And the sorts of issues that I know that Margaret Kerr has raised are the sorts of issues that would also be able to be picked up and resolved. It doesn't preclude a dog exercise area one way or the other, but resolved in a way which is an integrated approach to planning for the park. And I think that's what's needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Lorber?
Yeah, I guess, I appreciate the clarification from Councillor Andrew, and hopefully we get the wording about a draft policy inserting this. I'm just a little concerned about the potential for us to approve a draft policy or potential to approve a draft policy, go out for consultation for 28 days, and then we're in caretaker mode for an election, so it kind of will extend out another. We might as well have consultation be farther, because I don't think the council can adopt a policy during that period. So this council, as it's made up, will start this process, and then it'll be brought before a council that will look different because there'll be 2 less people at least around here, maybe some fresh faces. So I'm a little hesitant about that outcome, but I'm happy to have the conversation about dog exercise areas. I do all the time with the community. I have a wonderful dog. He's super, super friendly and helps out facilitate those conversations more often than not. So I'm happy to go with this, just knowing that when it's brought before us in September, we can still, if it's a bigger piece of work than we're thinking, there will be options for us. We're not locking ourselves into it. So thank you.
I might just get the manager governance to comment on that, because that might help inform any changes to wording that are considered.
Thank you. Through the chair, just going back to your query in regards to the caretaker period, we will be in caretaker period in September, leading into the election, so it'll be the end of August. That's hence the timing that we have put into the amendment. The process will be to endorse it first through council and then go out for consultation. That will be a significant period of time because we will be in caretaker, and then it will come back to council for adoption, at which point council can make further changes. So it's not the end of the process. So just take that into consideration as well.
All right, Councillor Williamson-Wong. I might go to Councillor Thompson first and then come back to you. Yeah.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I don't think it's a good idea to pass this amendment. I've never found that mixing up policy decisions and review of policy decisions with specific locations is ever a good idea. There's probably a couple of areas in North Fremantle where, the doggy people get on to Ingrid and myself, and my response to them has been, yep, we'll look at it. But first we're going to do a review of our dog policy and our off-lead areas. I think specifically mentioning a specific park when you're actually dealing with a review of policy is just simply, it's not a good look, because apart from anything else, it raises expectations from those people who wish to have the situation changed. So for those reasons, I won't support it. And I do agree with Councillor Graham, having been through doggy things with Leighton some years ago. You may remember that. Once people think there's a chance of them getting to have their dog somewhere, they never let up. So I would much prefer that we just simply go with the officer's recommendation, recognising that, indeed, as I said, I have made the same request to the manager of Parks and Recreation, and in relation to the dog area in North Fremantle, and my response has been to those residents that we'll wait and see. Once we review the policy, we'll take that into account. So I would prefer it the officer's recommendation as is.
Councillor Archibald.
Thank you. I am happy to look at supporting the amendment, but I'm just wanting to ask the mover of the amendment whether, for the sake of clarity, that after as an off-lead dog exercise area, we include in there with a draft revised policy to be brought back to council. So it's very clear it's a draft revised policy. And then thereafter it goes out to public consultation. So it's not actually clear in here that it will be what we get back in September will actually be a draft revised policy. Thank you.
All right. So is the mover and the seconder comfortable with that? I can't remember who seconded it, but it was someone over there. Yep. The change of words in there. All right. Further speakers? Otherwise I might speak. I'm a bit line ball on this because I am a little bit convinced by the idea of pulling out one park is possibly not a great idea, and that we'll get a whole lot of other parks jumping up and saying, like, we lived through Stevens Reserve, guys, like it wasn't that long ago. That said, I also think we shouldn't bear any regard to the timing of the election. I mean, I know, yeah, it's a thing, but I mean, I think we I personally would be comfortable in a mayoral election standing up and saying, yeah, we're doing the difficult business of local government, which is stuff like working out what is an appropriate dog exercise area policy. Like it's absolutely the hard work of local government that we should be doing. And yeah, people get worked up about it and it's close to their lives and it's very personal, but that's local government, hey? Like I just think about all the other issues we get dragged into, and this is one that, you know, we should be dragged into because it's actually our business. So, I'm not worried about the election timing. So I support it on the basis of the timing, but I am worried about putting in a really particular park just because it's been brought to us recently, because it feels to me like there's about 10 others that I think we could name who would suddenly go, can we be specially considered as well? Of course, they'll all be considered. They'll be considered in the policy review. So, if it was an amendment to look at the timing or to change the words in this, but because it's specifically about Mills and Ware Park, and even though I know we've received a petition on it, probably won't support the amendment, but I certainly support us cracking on with this work because it's what we should be doing. All right, back to the mover.
Thank you. And understanding that, of course, I have not been around for all of the dog context because it started much before I was alive and then in this chamber to be here for. Very supportive of kind of clarifying that it will be the draft revised policy that comes back to us. And I guess for me, it makes sense that we have kind of noted and supported the Mills and West petition by including it, and that the review will, include other parks as well. But this is the response to the petition itself. So I wanted to be clear that it would include that consideration of Mills and West Park as an off-lead dog exercise area, with the community understanding that that doesn't mean that we're going to be making it a dog off-lead park. Absolutely, this review could come back and say, sorry, it doesn't meet our criteria. And I think the community understand that. And I guess to that point, very supportive that the officers have recommended we do, that this isn't done by itself, but brought back with a whole policy review. I guess balancing that with the frustration of people who have been using Mills and Wares as a dog park for 20 years and now find themselves in a frustrating situation, which is just a matter for us to go through the processes on. So I guess the only other thing that I will say, everything, has been covered, is just the side note that Councillor Sullivan made around Mills and Wares as a specific park with specific issues. I'm not sure that it fits necessarily within what this petition is asking us to do, but it is something for us to be thinking about. So I just hope that councillors will support me that this has been drafted with staff to achieve the timeline that they think is possible, and that it is just showing the community that we understand that this is on the radar and that we are progressing with the review of the policy, and that the Mills and West petition was just a small kind of part in helping that along.
All right, so I'm going to put the amendment to a vote. All those in favour? Councillors Sullivan, Williamson, Wong, Lang, Mofflin and Archibald. And against? Councillors Thompson, Van Dawson, Fitzharding, Lorva, Kamada and Graham. And that's lost. Okay. So we're back to the item as amended, not amended, as is on the screen. Anything further on the item? Nope. I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that looks to be unanimous. Just checking. Okay, thank you. North Freo Heritage Trail Signage Revitalisation Project. Do I have a mover for that one? Councillor Van Dawson, seconded Councillor Thompson. Did we wish to speak to the item? Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to speak briefly on this. I really appreciate this work being done. I'm not sure if you're aware there is, it says it in the report, but there is existing heritage signage in North Fremantle, but it's very degraded. A lot of it you can't see. It's just completely, you can't actually read or see what's on the plaque. So really appreciate this project progressing and potentially getting some new heritage signage in the neighbourhood. Also just want to thank the officers for all their work on this. They did an amazing job with the community engagement. I went along to a couple of them, led mainly by Carvey and Sarah and the whole team. So really grateful for the work that's been done on this, and would encourage all the councillors to support this, the officers' recommendation on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson has seconded. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, not much more. Just to say that, it's been a long time coming, and this is one of those things where, again, like dogs, I used to say to people when they complained to me about the signage that was there but was so faded you couldn't see it, I said, yes, we're reviewing it, and yes, we will do it eventually, and we'll put it in the budget, but you just have to wait. So, I'm pleased, pleased to see it, and there's a couple of, Jerry McGill will be very pleased. He'll not talk to me anymore about it.
Is that a wish or a promise? Just on this one, I think absolutely agree. It's been a really excellent project, and I really like the way the outreach was done in the community, and it was you couldn't not know it was going on in North Fremantle. It was everywhere. I would note that we're going to walk past this on this heritage trail some rather aged assets or non-assets. I think there's a few things along that trail that we probably just want to keep our eye on in terms of benches, a shade structure that doesn't provide shade. I think a few people might know the one that I mean. And it might just bring a bit of attention to some of the other areas that need a bit of love. So I think we just need to be prepared in future budgets to think about what are the infrastructure needs along that trail. Because I think it will be really popular. It's an amazing section of land between, the river and the ocean, and these trails are really going to highlight what a special place it is. But we might be looking at a few additional items being requested along those trails. So I'll put this one to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Working group information report. Do I have a mover for that one? Councillor Thompson, seconder, Councillor Graham. Do any of the working group chairs or any of the working group members want to make comment on anything in the report? Give a bit of an update. Councillor Williamson-Wong.
I'll be quick. I just wanted to give an update on the climate emissions working group. Community emissions working group. We are progressing with creating a climate action plan, but I think what's been really interesting, it has been looking at the snapshot climate data to understand what our best leverage points are as a city. So just encouraging councillors to, if you haven't already had a look, just search snapshot climate Fremantle, and it comes up with a complete, profile on our community emissions, and it's quite interesting when you look at that, where the majority of emissions are coming from.
Thanks, Councillor Williamson-Wong. Any of the other chairs or members? Nothing else? Perhaps Councillor Kamada, I might just jump in on the International Relations Working Group. The discussions we had in the working group were really about sort of thinking about our policy and replacing the existing sister city policy with an international, it says internal relations policy, that's a sort of Freudian slip, I think, international relations policy that really focuses on the areas where we have a strong cultural connection, particularly through migration. So I think it's just worth flagging that's kind of where that thinking is going. And under that sort of thinking, I think it would be unlikely to take on many more of those types of relationships in the near future. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Councillor Kamada, but...
No, I think you've covered that well. And it leads well into the next item, so I'm sure we'll have some discussion on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kamada. All right, so we'll put that one to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. All right. The next item is proposed travel. Do I have a mover for this one? Councillor Kamada, seconded by Councillor Archibald. All right, Councillor Kamada, do you want to open us up on this?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Look, I think it's obvious in Fremantle the impact that sister city relationships and beyond sister city relationships, there's been Fremantle benefits from a cross-section of multicultural groups that have, over the years, beginning with our Indigenous people, it's been built upon layer over the top of layer, and we have, we now have this beautiful multicultural town that I think is really probably one of the greatest examples in the world of the way people can coexist and learn from one another. In this particular case, we're talking about a proposed travel to a European sister cities and friendship cities. So this will intake a number of our sister cities. It's a very important thing, I think, for our mayor to be seen, to personally, to have interaction with these groups. We saw the Italian delegation come over in October last year, and it was incredible how much they valued their time in Fremantle. And I think that through these relationships, we see economic benefits, artistic. I had notes here, and I lost them at the most valuable time. Hang on, bear with me. One thing I wanted to read out. Artistic student exchanges and enhancement of tourism. But the relationships and understanding connections at a personal level at the heart of any relationship, and are even more important in a world where international relationships seem to be fracturing. The personal relationships and friendships that I and others have established through connections with our sister cities in Italy and for others in other parts of the world are very important to these connections in fostering and maintaining traditional and I think even family relationships. So yeah, I fully support this particular item, and I hope others do too.
Thanks, Councillor Kamada. Councillor Lorber?
Yeah, just a question, and no, I'm not trying to be cheeky here, but this is an item to deal with travel with our mayor. Is this an item that the mayor should be in the room debating and speaking to, or is there a conflict?
I'm happy to take the CEO's comment on that.
It's up to the mayor to decide whether there's a conflict in dealing with an item. This one is a policy under the City of Fremantle, so we are debating whether or not we send a member of the council in accordance with our already determined international policy.
Perhaps if I could speak to why I have not declared an interest. I believe this is on behalf of the city. I don't have a personal interest in necessarily doing this. It's a pretty intense couple of weeks away from the family, and I think it's something that one might do for the city, but certainly not for fun or enjoyment. I think it's very clearly work related. So as the CEO said, it's a policy of the city that council decides whether this travel can go ahead. I guess, am I speaking to the item now, so I need to speak to the item? I'm answering a question? Great. Okay. Councillor Van Dawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say I strongly support this recommendation and the Mayor's visit to these particular sister cities. I think we have a really strong relationship with these cities and have received visitors from that area, and of course all our cultural heritage and diversity in our community. I think this is a great initiative and something that should definitely be undertaken. I did have a question just on, there was just something raised the speaker this evening, and also in the report from officers, it mentioned possibly another councillor going or an officer. And I understand that the budget that's been put forward includes accommodation. However, our speaker did mention possibly the accommodation cost will be covered. I just wondered, would it be possible, once costs are confirmed, I don't know if there's an appetite for it to come back to council to consider, like if there's budget for another councillor to go, I don't know.
I can get a comment on that. Yeah.
It was just in the report that should
Yeah.
councillors wish someone else to go, I just thought if there was money, maybe we'd like to consider
Yeah,
that.
I
in
think it was a
future.
discussion at briefing as well. Yeah.
Through the chair, that's correct. Look, if council do approve a second person, which could possibly be an amendment, we could do that within the budget if there is budget available. If a budget amendment is needed, then it would need to come to council for consideration. But at this stage, we don't know whether those costs will be covered or not, or they're not confirmed at this stage. So hence, at this time, we have recommended that it be done. It's just the mayor.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. That's all from me.
Councillor Archibald?
Thank you. I'll just, on the topic, I did raise on Monday night the option of a second person going, and at the time I raised the option for a staff member to attend. And on further discussions with people, I would like to put an amendment, which I have discussed with the manager of governance, that we just include, I can't remember the exact words, do you have those there? It's a very small amendment, but it just allows it to be a staff member or a councillor. So at this stage we don't need to make a decision on that, but it's whoever the best representative would be. So it's for the mayor and one additional city representative to attend, and that the budget would come back, yeah. So could I just move that minor amendment?
Yep. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Sullivan? All right. So on the amendment, okay. Councillor Thompson on the
amendment.
On the amendment.
Only I'd like to support the amendment, and indeed, my view. If you'll indulge me a moment, I've been on a number of these sister city visits, both with community groups, and also I've been on two with the mayor. It helps the mayor a lot if there is somebody else along, and I don't mean. In my view, I actually think it's probably better that an officer goes along, perhaps at a lower level, because if you look at the itinerary, it's a very packed itinerary. And what I found when I accompanied Mayor Pettit on those two visits is that I wound up, and I don't think council paid for it. I think I went myself, but I wound up doing a lot of the back work, back work that needed to be done, talking to officers, what's happening, where are we going, what's the arrangements, and that leaves the mayor free to actually do what the intent of the visit is to make connections, discuss issues, discuss things that you could do together. You do actually need a dog. You actually do need a dog's body along to actually do a lot of the grunt work that needs to be done on these visits. Look at it. Just look at the itinerary. So I'm very much in favour of somebody else going on. If there's a councillor, well and good, but my view is that an officer whose job it is to actually make the connections, do all the arrangements and stuff is probably the best bet. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Graham. Sorry, I jumped over you because I wasn't sure whether you were going to speak on the amendment or on the item, but did you wish to speak now?
Yeah, is that all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm allowed to, yeah. Well, before I do, can we go to page 26? And I perhaps should have flagged this before. And this is in case this is ever cut and pasted again in the future. 2000, Mayor Richard Udding, Jeff Graham, blah, blah, blah. What is not mentioned in there was that the whole preface of that sister city visit was the reciprocal signing of the Courtula Friendship Agreement. Courtula had been out here 4 or 5 months before, done the signing, and then we were invited back and obligated to go back and do the signing there. So that was the most important part of the whole trip, even though the opening of the International Airport on Madeira was a rather fantastic day. Now, where am I? Look, I'll speak on the amendment and the whole item, if that's all right, Madam Mayor. And I certainly concur, having done this trip with Mayor Udding in 2000, organisation wasn't one of his greatest skills, and he certainly didn't like carrying all the gifts that we got. So I was the hack. I was a lot younger then, and there was a lot of hack work involved. It was unrelenting. We went to, 4 or 5 places, and we ended up sending boxes back because we couldn't carry anything anymore. I mean, so you really do need to think about having the second one. And it was good to yin and yang. You know, we'd float ideas. We would, he'd make me do a speech and I'd tell him how boring his speeches were and all this sort of thing. So it's a very important part of the visit. And the fact that these visits, people might poo-bum them, but, you only have to look at what Capo de Lando does and their respect for Fremantle. I mean, it is unbelievable to think that a city way over in Sicily, where we've had a lot of the migrants come from, are so much in love still with Fremantle and the people of Fremantle, that they just respect the respect that we had. I mean, I'm going back in time, I know, but it was just unbelievable. We were blown away by it. And it's the same now when they came out here in, was it October, just how much they enjoyed our company and we enjoyed theirs. So these things are very important to the lifeblood of the community and the greater, and it's just not, and Mayor Utting kept on saying, greater Fremantle, because we were talking to Croatians, we were talking to the Italians, to the Madeirans, and it just goes on and on and on. I'm actually don't have to repeat a lot of this stuff, but anyway, I'm fully supportive of it. We did speak at the last Sister Cities meeting about sending somebody else. We had a frank discussion about that and I was all for it. So I would support the amendment proposed by Councillor Archibald, I think, after all this. So, anyway, let's hope it goes smoothly.
Thanks, Councillor Graham. Councillor Archibald, did you wish to close or should I put the amendment? Oh, Councillor Lang.
Just a question. Because the budget in here isn't entirely clear about what we're paying for. It just says flights, 5,000. I'm assuming automatically now we're just adding on an extra $10,500 per person too here?
No.
I'll go back to the Manager of Governance because I think there was a point of clarification there.
Through the chair, just in regards to the budget, there is 15,000 in the international relations budget at this point in time. We have sought a quote which did come to that amount. There may be some some accommodation gifted to the city for this travel as well, which would be considered as a gift, which may take that amount out of that equation. If there is additional money that is required, we can do a budget amendment from there as well.
Okay, sorry, I'll re-clarify that. The $10,000 is per person.
Correct, that's for one person.
That's what I was asking.
Correct,
yeah. That's all. And the 5,000, that's international flights and internal flights?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, that was the question I had. The other question, while I'm asking the questions, I may as well. I'm aware other mayors have visited internationally since 2000, but they're not listed here. Why are they not on there?
Just through the chair, some of that isn't funded by the city. It was attached to other travel at the time. I would have to go and clarify that to make sure that I can answer that question entirely.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I won't answer that. Just to clarify, because I haven't spoken on the amendment, I think the expectation is that 10,000 assumes that there are no on-ground costs covered by the host city. That's never been the case in the past. It's unlikely that this time round that we would be paying those on-ground costs, because in the past they've always picked those up. But it is the right thing for officers to do, to assume that all costs will sit with us in putting this forward as a worst case scenario, if you like. So I wouldn't sort of assume the maths would be 10 times 2. It's likely to be airfares times 2 plus some stuff around the edges, but one would assume that offer that we heard from Capo de Lando tonight would be repeated in the other sister cities to some greater or lesser extent. So, yeah, their generosity is often quite significant in this. And as the Manager Governance said, my advice was that would have to be declared as a gift, which would be entirely appropriate. Councillor Archibald, did you wish to close? Okay, I'll put this one to a vote. All those in favour? And that looks to be Okay, Archibald, Graham, Mofflin, Kamada, Williamson Wong, Sullivan, Van Dawson and Thompson for and against. Councillors Lawver and Lang, so that's carried. So we'll come back to the item as amended. Councillor Mofflin.
Thank you. I just wanted to move my proposed amendment to this item as well.
Excellent. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Mofflin's? Yep, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. And yeah, very briefly, have heard about all the fantastic outcomes which this international travel provides for the city and the relationships it builds and the opportunities that come from that. And I think it's incumbent upon us to ensure that that is captured by the organisation, and that if there are any actions and learnings that we can take away from that, we bring them back to the city. And who knows who will be sitting around the table in the future, but important that we get that in the organisational memory. So propose that the request for a report on the outcomes or observations from the trip.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan, the seconder.
What he said.
Fair. All right. Anything else on the amendment? Okay, well, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that does look to be unanimous. So that's carried. So back to the item as amended again. Perhaps I can speak on the item after Councillor Lang, whose light's just gone on.
Sure. I didn't vote for the last amendment. I guess where I'm challenged with this is looking back through the history of these meetings. In year 2000, Mayor Richard Utting and Jeff Graham visited, and this is in an era where the mayor got paid, I don't even know, it might have been a couple of $1,000s or something like this. Whereas today, the mayor gets paid significantly more. And in that time, if I'm led to believe, the Mayor Brad Pettit has visited those cities officially, but paid for his own travel. Sorry.
Do want to clarify that. I think he was attending professional development that was funded by the city in other cities, but maybe we'll just leave that one for the history books.
So I'm acknowledging a couple of things, is that mayors and elected members get paid significantly more now than they did in the year 2000. And I don't want to dismiss the importance of the relationship that we have with these sister cities. And myself, I visited Capo di Orlando last year, and I paid for myself to go there, and I met the mayor and other elected members in Capo di Orlando. And what struck me in those meetings were, and the people I met in Capo di Orlando, were how many people knew of Fremantle compared to perhaps how many people in Fremantle know of Capo di Orlando. I'd say proportionally, significantly higher, there is a stronger connection in Capo di Orlando to Fremantle. So I don't want to take away from that relationship. I guess where I'm going with this is it's the financial costs. I know we have a tight budget, that's what we're working through at the moment. And I know there are costs associated. When I went there, I paid for my own accommodation, didn't want to get caught up in any of those news stories that came out of the other councils recently with sister cities. So I paid for everything myself, but I guess where I'm going with this, I would like to support this, but perhaps if it was a different amount or like a 50% weighting, because I would probably assume that the mayor isn't going to be doing 100% of council activities while there. There would be some other activities done in addition. That's what my experience was when I met some of the people in Capo di Orlando. So I want to support it, but perhaps if it was a different, like a 50% budgetary amount, taking into consideration mayors do get paid more now, and there probably are recreational activities happening to the side. So that's just what I wanted to say.
All right, I might speak to the item now. I think it's absolutely true that a number of us have funded our own travel to sister cities, and I went as a councillor. I know Councillor Kamada also travelled there as a councillor. I addressed the council, in Italian. It was great. They really, we had a great reciprocal relationship. But I think the fundamental misunderstanding here is that as the mayor, there are certain things you do as the mayor on behalf of the city, and you don't do them because they're pleasurable or fun. You do them because that is the responsibility of the mayor, and it's kind of like citizenship, making citizens every 3 months. Or you put on the chains of the mayor and you do the role of the mayor, and it's not Hannah thinking this sounds like a great trip to go and do. Quite frankly, I wouldn't do this trip if I was not doing it representing the city of Fremantle. Sure, when you travel as a councillor or you travel independently funded, I'm sure you do recreational things along the way, and so you should. I don't see this as a recreational visit. I think if you're trying to pack 4 sister cities, and I can't remember the number of flights, I feel like it was 22, into less than 2 weeks between council meetings, it's not something that you would do for enjoyment. So I just really want to be clear. I don't think we value this in Australia in the same way as this is valued in Europe and in our sister cities in Europe in particular. When they have significant civic events, and in this case this is the centenario, the 100 years of Capodolando, it's kind of offensive actually not to show up. I didn't go last year. There was a trip to Korčula, I think, with a dance group that, 130 people from our region went to Croatia with the folkloric dance group, and they're still bitter about it. Like, they still feel some level of offence that the mayor of the city of Fremantle did not come. It is absolutely, they don't necessarily like me, maybe they do like me, it doesn't matter. It's not about Hannah, it's about what you do as the mayor of a city. So I just want to be really clear that this is civic responsibility. It's not a question of somebody wants to go on a trip somewhere. It's about representing the city, and that's what they want. And while they enjoy councillors coming to visit, it doesn't have the same civic magnitude, if you like, of a mayor representing the city, being there at the sister city for an insignificant time for them. So to economise, we've certainly tried to cover, I think, all sister cities in Europe in one rather frantic swoop. I hope that I do them justice in terms of what I know they'll want to do on the ground in terms of engagement. They do tend to want a fairly full program and for you to meet absolutely everyone. And fair enough, that is what you're there to do. So I do just want to make that point of clarity. I think if you asked any of the other mayors who did this travel, they would say this is not something you do for personal enjoyment. It is something you do because you are adequately representing your city with those agreements your city is committed to. Councillor Lorber?
I do want to recognise the important relationship that we do have with this city has, with Capodolando. It's a long-standing relationship, and it's something that does, like any relationship, it does take effort, and you have to take time, and you have to work on it. But when reading this report, it would be really easy for someone of the public to think that there's only been 3 visits since 1997 by a representative from the city. And that really, to me, we've heard tonight, it's just not 2 members in this room have been there and on behalf of the city and represented the city in just the time that I've been on council. So in an alternate universe where if I was the mayor of Fremantle, I wouldn't ask the council to approve this. I just wouldn't do it. In the grand scheme of things, the amount of money, it's a rounding error for one of Graham's projects, but it's just a free kick. Anyone in the community will just, have a go at council for doing this. And while it is an important relationship, I can't support it. We get queries all the time about, broken sidewalks or whatever. And I guarantee this will probably be the first thing that people bring up. But you know what? This won't be the first time, and it won't be the last time that I'm probably the only one or one of 2 that vote for or against something. And, but once a decision has been made by this council, we'll all move on, and I won't be critical of it because that's our role as a council. Once decisions are made, that's what we do, we move on. So I personally can't support it. For those reasons, I think that it's, for the amount of money that it is, it's going to cause an exponential amount of grief.
Councillor Williamson-Wong?
Thank you. I'll be brief, hopefully. I think that there's no doubt that these are very significant relationships for our city to have, and I can't really comprehend why all of a sudden we're talking about how much we each get paid to sit around this table, because I think we're all aware of the role of being a councillor and a mayor, and that we are appreciate the work that goes into it, how much we're paid, and I'm not entirely sure that people who've taken the time out of their own holidays that they might be on to visit cities, which have no doubt been very important, is the same as what is being presented in front of us. And I think Councillor Lorver is right. This is quite a minimal amount in what our budget expenditures look like. And so I think it's a no-brainer to me that we send the Mayor on this travel to support our sister cities, and also noting the amendment to send an additional city representative. We heard from Councillor Graham and Councillor Thompson about how full-on these visits are and the need for a second person to be there to not only represent the city, but I think to also absorb as much as we can of the outcomes or the observations from each visit, as Councillor Mofflin has in his amendment. So I'm highly supportive of this item.
Thanks. Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, very simply. I mean, a city that can't fund its important cultural activities is not a city at all.
All right. I think we might be ready to bring this to a conclusion. Councillor Kamada, did you want to close for us?
Were you talking? You're right. Look, thank you. This certainly won't be a walk in the park for the Mayor. It will be a full-on trip, as indicated by the, my fellow councillors who have been on some of these trips before. Myself and Councillor Langworth, in the last couple of years, very fortunate to enjoy the hospitality of the people of Kapalolundal and our own personal trips. But it's a great thing that someone from Fremantle, it doesn't matter if you've got Sicilian background or whatever your background is, they will welcome you with open arms. There's no question about that. If we can't respect a relationship like this, then there's something wrong. And if people can't understand that, how important these types of relationships are in the grander scheme of things, well then, like I say, they need to have a really good think about it. And, this is one specific aspect. There's so many parts that make up Freo, but this is an important little aspect. And I think that I've got no problems sticking my neck out and saying that if these relationships are treated in a respectful, measured way, and I think that Councillor Mofflin's amendment certainly strengthens this whole situation. And yeah, I have no hesitation whatsoever to support this, and I hope others do.
Thank you, Councillor Kamada. So we'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Councillors Archibald, Graham, Mofflin, Kamada, myself, Williamson, Wong, Sullivan, Van Dawson and Thompson, and against Councillors Lorvan and Lang, and that's carried. Okay. Okay, we have Destination Marketing Working Group. Can I just find out if anyone wishes to speak on the following items? So if you can look at your run sheet. 13, 15, 16, 17, 18. Anyone wish to speak on any of those? Thanks, Councillor Sullivan. All right, so I'm going to suggest we move 13, 15, 16, 17 and 18 on block. Councillor Thompson moving that way, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. All of those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you. All right, so we'll come back to the Destination Marketing Working Group membership. Do I have a mover for that one? Councillor, we all did it at the same time, Mofflin and then Graham. Councillor Mofflin, did you want to open up the debate on this?
Yeah, happy to open. And yeah, very quickly, I think particularly the inclusion of the Fishing Boat Harbour work representative as part of the Destination Marketing Working Group is covering an important gap that has existed in that group in the past, and really pleased to see that that's been added, and look forward to the ongoing good work of the group.
Thank you. Councillor Graham, did you wish to add anything?
Nothing to add, Madam Mayor.
All right. I think we've got a couple of amendments for this one. Councillor Lorver's amendment is listed first, I think. Let's go to that one. So Councillor Lorver, that's on the screen. Do we have a seconder for that one? Okay, Councillor Kamada to second that one. All right, Councillor Lorber.
Okay, well, yeah, so I want to thank Matt, the Director of City Business, for the clarification the other day about the role of this group. You know, as I mentioned, I'll just say it here as well, when there's a news article with one of the members being quoted multiple times in the same article about establishing a new precinct, giving it a name, and that our marketing efforts are going to, and street signage and everything is going to be part of that effort. I think that it's good to look at what the group's doing when someone feels that comfortable. So I appreciate you bringing the terms of reference back to the group and reiterating the role of this destination marketing group. So as a result of that, the amendment I'm putting forward is two parts, and I'm happy to move them separately, and it's very, very simple. The first one is because if you look at the terms of reference for this group, it says that this group is to represent, or wait, sorry, I'm pull up here, I'll say the exact words, is to develop a marketing plan that supports all businesses to customer industries in Fremantle. So basically just allowing some use or some participation from folks that live in North, Freo, Central, East, and Coastal is probably pretty well represented, but I'm happy to include that again if there's someone else that wants to sign up for that. So that way we can maybe get a little bit of geographic diversity and ideas, because there's probably some really great folks that live out, well, I know there are some really great folks that live out in Hilton that are whizzes with design and marketing and that kind of stuff. And then part B, I'm moving that because I think having some idea about the work that this group is doing and the good efforts that they're putting in and the results that we're getting from the campaigns that are run would be very good for this council. So that way, if we're getting a more regular update on the different campaigns that are being funded. So those are the reasons why I put those forward, and hopefully we can get those included.
Councillors. Councillor Moughlin.
Yeah, just a question to officers in regards to the amendment, and just to understand, is there anything that currently prevents any other members of the Fremantle community from putting their hand up to be a representative on the destination marketing working group, so around Part A, and then on B, the quarterly report or at the end of every paid marketing campaign, the extent of paid marketing campaigns, how frequently do they run, and is that a reporting burden that is too onerous to come back after every one of those paid marketing campaigns?
Through the chair, currently anyone can apply to sit on the Destination Marketing Working Group, whether it's from North, Coastal, Central or East Ward, so they currently have the ability to do that. As far as Part B goes, we prepare that reporting anyway, so it wouldn't be seen to be onerous to be presenting that back to council.
Thanks, Councillor Moughlin.
Thank you for the answer, and yeah, with that clarification, I would like to request that when this does get moved, that the two parts are moved separately. I can't support A because there are already those opportunities, but happy for that information to be presented back to council.
Councillors, any further? Yep, Councillor Lang.
Yeah, I would also support voting on it in two parts as well. Part A, I get the intent, and that's I assume the intent is getting representation across the whole city for the marketing group, which is feedback I've received. But if the best candidates all happen to be in one ward, then I want the best candidates on the working group, wherever that ward may be. So that's, I get what's going on, but I don't want to preclude ourselves.
Okay, Councillor Archibald.
I just thought I'd let you know that I know that two of those people on the list, one lives in North Ward, the other lives in Central. I'm not sure where the other people live, but it's two wards already covered.
Thank you. I'm on the fence a bit about this one. I'm in agreement with Councillor Moughlin about Part A. I guess what I'm a little bit concerned about with Part B is a sense that if you don't particularly like something, it's a great idea to tie it up in as much red tape as humanly possible to try and make its workings and operations a little bit more encumbered. And I just get a feeling that if we get, this reporting, certainly I want it as part of the corporate plan, I want it as part of it, to pull it out specifically as a single activity where officers make spending decisions. I mean, I'm just as likely to say every time you put in a new footpath, like, I genuinely would like this. Every time the infrastructure team puts in a new footpath, I'd like a report on it, because I love footpaths. What can I say? I do. I really genuinely. But I would not do that to the infrastructure team, because they're professionals who make good assessments about where to spend their money on footpath upgrades and how to spend their money on footpath upgrades, and I have trust with them. So I just feel a bit like this is taking a particular part of our organisation and saying, we think you need to do special levels of reporting to us, and I just feel sort of uncomfortable about that, because I wouldn't want to imply that I don't trust that part of the organisation just as much as I trust all the other parts of our organisation. Councillor Graham?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, if you go to page 30, this is Destination Marketing Working Group membership. This is nothing about reporting. Part B, a quarterly report relating to the progress of the plan and marketing campaigns and all that. You can bring this up at IEMs, up at the budget meeting or anything, but not tonight. I mean, so many items we put through this council get clouded by an amendment that isn't relative to what the item is about. So shouldn't have even been accepted. But anyway, there you go.
Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thank you. Just a clarification question, please. The Director of City Business said that the report is already made annually. Was that right in my interpretation? Is there already a report that's written quarterly or annually? And how does that relate into what this amendment is asking for, I guess, additional tasks for the staff to be completing?
Perhaps can I, with your permission, build on that? How are you reporting this to us currently also? And that'll...
Through the chair, so typically we do present results from the year's activities as part of the budget process annually. We did do a major review of the previous 4 years of the strategy, which was presented in a substantial reporting document, which is available to council and publicly, and we have circulated that. Every time we do conduct a major paid campaign, we create a report that provides results on the campaign. Those results are then used to determine how we plan our future marketing activities. Given that we already create those reports, if council did want to see those reports, we could do so. We would just need to determine how often that is and how much information you would need to see in that.
Okay. Did you want to? No. All right. So we'll go to Councillor Lawver to close then.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty clear that the reports are not additional red tape. They're being done right now. And if you look at the item before us in our agenda, the information we're being given is from 2018 till now. It's not segmented out as to what's recently happened. It's like everything since the conception of the group. So I just felt as long as the reports were being done anyways, letting us know how it's ticking along isn't that big of a deal. We are amending the terms of reference, so I thought that was, very worthwhile to put in there. And if you actually look at the terms of reference, 2.1, it says that this group will provide advice and/or recommendations to council on the following, yada, yada, yada. If you go to 4.1, the group is to provide ongoing advice and recommendations to council on matters related to destination marketing in line with our plan adopted by this council. So it's already in there that they're supposed to be providing ongoing advice and ongoing recommendations to council. So having a report after the decisions have been made, I think, is entirely appropriate. As far as the membership goes, I just really would like to see a marketing campaign that was, in line with Fremantle, but I understand why it does that. And if that doesn't get up, that's fine, but I don't see anything wrong with providing council with a report in line with the current terms of reference that is no additional work for staff. So thank you.
Alrighty, so I will put Part A to a vote. So Part A to a vote. All those in favour of Part A? Councillor Lorber, and against? Remainder. And Part B, all those in favour? Councillors Lorber and Lang and Mofflin, and those against? Remainder. All right, so both of those are lost, and we'll go back to the item. I also put in an amendment in relation to working group membership, a little bit, because I sort of paid additional scrutiny to this off the back of the whole Freo social, what's a good word, palaver, over the last week, and thought, actually, like, we've got some fairly significant people in our creative industries sector who do significantly contribute to the attraction of Fremantle as a tourism destination. And I think, you know, if you read our creative strategy, it's pretty clear that there is a lot of stuff going on in our creative industries that is part of the identity, part of the culture, and part of the reason why people come to Fremantle. So, you know, and then I thought, well, do we have people in that sector who have sufficient marketing or tourism experience that their CV would show up on the desk and we'd think, yeah, that's someone who should be on the Destination Marketing Working Group. And of course, seconder. That's why they're looking at me funny. Thanks, Councillor Sullivan. I knew he was going to do that. Thank you. You look at things like Biennale and the significant efforts they put into ensuring that people come to Fremantle from all over the state to make their events a success, that it just makes sense to me that we should open up a position there at the next available opportunity to have someone from our creative industry sector who has suitable qualifications. So that's me. Councillor Sullivan, did you want to say anything? Councillor Lorber.
Just a quick question. How does this one different than Part B2, where we have one representative for Fremantle's arts and culture business sector? Is this different than that?
I'll go to the Director City Business, but I think we don't currently have anyone on the group.
Through the chair, so we would consider creative industries to be different to arts and culture specifically. Creative industries we see as being anything from multimedia through to technology and website development. It's quite a broad sector and probably not covered in the membership at the moment.
All right. Further speakers on this one? Councillor Lang? You're just voting. Go on then. All right, all those in favour of the amendment? And that's unanimous? Yep, okay.
That's an amendment.
All right, so we're back on the item as amended now, which is going on the screen. And is there any further speakers on the item? Councillor Lorber?
Yeah, I'd like to pull out applicant C from the other ones. Just can explain the reasons when.
So you want to
A, B, and D. And
appoint applicants A, B, and D, and then another point 3 to appoint applicants C, and then vote on them separately. Is that correct?
Yep.
Did that follow? So yeah, delete it from there and do the same thing underneath it as point 3.
Do we have to go behind closed doors to discuss the confidential documents?
We will, if you want to speak to that.
I can try to speak just to the general nature of it, and then if I get to...
Yeah, if maybe just stay away from names or organisations. Did you wish to speak to?
Oh, I guess the reason why I'm pulling out applicant C, I sent around an email if you haven't looked at the confidential documents. A, B, and D all provided very thorough resumes and cover letters and applications, and applicant C provided a very brief email apologizing for missing the deadline and not anything else. So I would just like to know a little bit more about this person and why they would like to be on the group before putting them on there. I mean, it's everyone else has gone through the effort to provide us with that information. So we can also put people on in October. We're expanding the group to include these people. So I just think that, maybe applicant C can put forward a real good application for the group in October. Because everyone else has.
All right. I have kind of lost track of who has spoken on the item. We're not considering this an amendment, are we? We're just moving them so we can vote it as part 1 and part 2. Did anyone wish to speak on the item further? I'm not sure if I've spoken on the item or the amendment. I've spoken on the amendments. I did do a Google search on applicant C and was pretty easily able to find a fair amount of their CV online. So I guess I was comfortable to include them in that batch, but I can also understand the reasoning why people might not want to. So, yeah. All right, can I put it to a vote? Are we there? So there's... Can we look at the whole thing? Thank you. Okay, so maybe I'll do item 1 and then 2 part 1 and then 2 part 2, just to be clear. Okay, so all those in favour of 1, first bit, that looks to be unanimous. Part 1 of 2, so 2 part 1. And that seems to be unanimous. Yep. And part 2 of 2. So councillors Archibald, Graham, Mofflin, Kamada, Fitzharding, Lang, Williamson, Wong, Sullivan, Van Dawson, and against Thompson and Lorver. So that's carried. Okay. No, we didn't. We're not at 9 o'clock, so I won't move to extend the meeting beyond 9, although I sort of foreshadow that it's possible that may happen in the next little while, because we're coming to notices of motion. Excellent. All right. Have I covered everything else on the agenda? Can I just check? Yeah, excellent. All right, Councillor Lang, over to you.
I need a seconder, I guess.
Yeah. Councillor Williamson on.
Oh, okay, fantastic. The first bit I just want to point out, just a bit of admin on this one. I actually drafted this a fair while ago. It's just been sitting in my outbox. So that date of before the 1st of March is now pretty unrealistic for the staff turnaround, so I recognise that. This was actually intended to come to council a couple of months ago, but didn't make it here. So if this does progress, then obviously we will amend that to a date that's suitable for the team to put something together. This is not about anyone in this room. It's not about this particular council. This is more about what's happening in the future. And this is something I've been considering on council for quite a few years. And in that time, I've spoken to community members and asked them a simple question. Do you think you should know if your elected members are affiliated with a political party? And everyone says yes. The CEO I've spoken to about this for a couple of years. I'm aware the CEOs receive emails on this from members of the community also. And in that time, South Perth has adopted this register and Bayswater have also adopted this register. So in essence, the question that I've been asking the community, should we have a register? So you know if your elected members are a part of a political party, is the same question I'm asking each of you tonight. This provides full transparency to our community. As I say again, in my own surveys, would like to see this information easily available. It's going to eliminate false reporting. Numerous times I've noted myself and colleagues in this room get caught up in social media or media articles that link us to being members of political parties. And I am not sure if that's true. The creation of a register gives one single source of the truth and hopefully will eliminate some of that miscommunication in the media. Another important point of this register, and I acknowledge that it would only exist once someone is elected.
being part of a political party does give someone a leg up in an election process. It's undeniable. And that, in a way, creates barriers to entry for grassroots people to be elected. If you're a member of a political party and running for local government, you've got access immediately to a base of volunteers. You potentially get assistance with mail-outs, stamps, core flutes, and all these things could be the difference between winning and losing an election. So there is a barrier to entry discussion I wanted to put on the table here as well. The best thing about local government is that it's grassroots, and I'd really like to see it stay that way. And then, of course, yes, linking to the summary I've written, which I've taken from the Walga website, which was developed on the back of elected members of council moving towards state or federal election, there is potential for impartiality, interest, or perception of bias as if there is an overlap between a matter before council and a party's platform or a party's policy. And that is especially possible in an electorate like Fremantle, where we have big election promises coming forward. So it's about future councils voting for Fremantle and hopefully not voting along political party lines or for political party promises. And it's about getting grassroots elected members in Fremantle as well. It's not happening here, obviously, but the idea that perhaps local government is used as an incubator for future candidates as well. In this room, often we really take pride in some of our declarations, members of sports clubs, members of this group, members of that group, members of all kinds of societies, but it's been pretty quiet. It is pretty quiet on the political party affiliation side. I've noticed that in my time on council. So, yeah, with local elections on the horizon, the question is going to be asked to candidates, and you get asked that door knocking, are you part of a political party? So this motion doesn't answer that question for the person in the community, but it makes asking the question easier for the member in the community, because if there's a register, like, are you part of a party? Well, I'm going to know about it in a few months if you're elected. So it makes that discussion more easy and more transparent. So we know when we're elected, we need to declare where we work, where we live, if you own a property in a neighbouring council, if you've been given a gift or bought a beer or something as simple as that. This is really no different. It's just another declaration, and it's catching up with a couple of other local governments. That's my opening piece. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Williamson-Wong. Seconder.
I'd like to wait to listen to debate.
Sure. Can I ask a question of the mover? If someone was to receive that sort of type of support that you've talked about in terms of, I think, help with mail-outs or core flutes, how would that currently be captured during an election process?
I assume that person may declare they've received funding or something. I don't know.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I'm not supportive of the recommendation. There are two things confused here. One is the code of conduct, and the other is the register. So I have no problem with a voluntary code of conduct. A voluntary register, and for those people who wish to make public their political affiliations, that's fine, and I would have no problem with that. And but to actually update the city's code of conduct, the code of conduct is essentially dealing with the way we make our decisions. And forgive me, but I can't remember any political party ever having an issue before council that we've had to make decisions on. You know, in the sense that we don't have any development applications from political parties or any suggestions for us to take particular stances. So, and I think, you know, if anything, if you ask me if as a political person, do I ever make decisions based on politics? I don't think so. But you could also ask me the same about my religious beliefs. do I ever make decisions based on my religious beliefs. Politics and religion, two sides of the same thing. So if you're going to register yourself as a member of the Greens or the Liberals or the Labor, well, I would probably say that, you know, a lot of us are actually more influenced by our religious beliefs than we are by our political beliefs. So why not have a religious register so people know if I'm a Catholic or an Anglican? So, yeah, look, I think the Code of Conduct deals with the way we make our decisions. Voluntary register, I would certainly be supportive. And I think if you, in fact, just took out the words requirement and took out the reference to the city's Code of Conduct, I would quite happily support a voluntary register.
Councillor Moughlin.
Thank you. Yeah, I suppose it's an interesting one, and I certainly declared an interest when I entered the meeting tonight that I do have a membership of a political party and have been asked, you know, many times out, you know, in the community and door knocking, and have shared that. The answer that I've given to people is I've shared my membership of the Australian Labor Party, and also then spoken about my relationship to respective community clubs and organisations and other beliefs that I have, and I've had no problem sharing any of those, because they all contribute to the kind of person that I am and the values that I hold. So personally, I actually have no problem with that being out publicly. The concern I have with this, and Councillor Lang spoke to it, he said this isn't happening here in Fremantle. So I'm not sure of the issue that that this motion's trying to solve for. And in actual fact, I think it may create an issue in that people start to read into a person's membership or otherwise and believe that that is influencing a decision. And I, you know, in that sense, like I, you know, reflected on my own decision making here in council, and not once during that time have I considered a party affiliation or otherwise, and have made decisions based on the merits of the item in front of me. And yeah, as I said, my concern is that people start to draw dots and lines, or lines between dots that don't actually exist, and create an idea that there's somehow something going on with decision making that actually isn't occurring. So I don't support the motion tonight, but as I said, and I've put on the record out here, I don't have a problem sharing my own beliefs, commitments, memberships, whatever it might be.
Councillors. Councillor Lorber.
I don't know where Aidan's getting that we're getting big election promises and the election at Fremantle, but good on you. You know, I know that political parties don't have applications directly before council, and I get the intent behind this, and I, you know, so when this was, you know, put in, I actually, surprised, I did a little research and started looking up some stuff, because I think you're a membership of a political party, and I have been a member in the past of a political party, but not anymore. It's different from a bowls club. It's different from a sporting club. It's different from going to church, because it's the only club you can be kicked out of for not necessarily towing the line. And I say that because if you just Google the different political parties in their constitution, the Liberal Party of WA, the qualification to be an ordinary member, you are in accord with the objects of the party and has agreed to be bound by the constitution and rules of the party. And if your rights and duties as a Liberal member, you have to adhere to and comply with the constitution and rules and use your best endeavors to actively promote the objects of the party. Now, if you don't do that, the discipline is you go to some committee, you can be referred to a committee and be censured, suspension, or expelled from the Liberal Party. WA Labour is very, very similar. The state platform, right in the front, section 1, it says, these rules, including schedules and appendices, shall be binding on all members of the party. So that includes platform, that includes a lot of different things. And the commitment of party members in WA Labour is all members agree to faithfully uphold to the best of their ability the rules and the state and national platforms, the objectives of the party, and to work and vote for selected parliamentary candidates for public office. Again, if you don't do that, what's the thing? You can get referred to the Disputes and Complaints Panel, whose powers include suspension or expulsion. WA Nationals, very much the same thing. The Constitution and any rules that apply to the party have effect as an agreement between the party and each member. So, you know, you're going to support the objects of the election platform of the party, and yada, yada, more and more. WA Greens, very similar language as well. The eligibility for membership, again, according to the Constitution of the Greens, is to support the Greens Incorporated charter, vision, and objectives, agrees to abide by this Constitution and the Code of Conduct. And again, if you don't do that and you refer to the Censure, Suspension, and Expulsion Committee, those are some of the ramifications. So I completely understand Frank's point of view, and I think a lot of us, everyone here, wouldn't bring that baggage with them to decision making. But I think, as Councillor Lang put forward, this is about future people that we may not know yet, who might get elected to this council, and they might not have as strong of a will to be independent and risk suspension, expulsion, and censure from a political party that maybe they see a future in. So having a register, I think, is a sensible step. It's not that big of a deal. As Councillor Moughlin said, he's happy to share it, and I'm sure other people would as well. And I think it would provide some clarity, because when things come before council, people can honestly say, yeah, that person was the member of a party and they didn't actually vote with the party, so they're obviously independent. So I think there's a lot of upside to this. I'm curious as to why it's in the Code of Conduct, and maybe we can get a little clarification if it needs to live in there or if it can just be a separate register. Again, I think membership in at least these 4 political parties that I found their constitutions, it's different from a bowling club, because if you vote against your bowling club, you're just going to get the stink eye when you walk in there next. They're not going to take away your membership, but these ones, they actually can, and that's right in all their founding documents. So I'm inclined to support this, but I do want to know if this has to live in the city's code of conduct, or if it could just be a register that's available on the website.
I'm not sure whether that's to Councillor Lang or to the officers.
I've taken the liberty of copying some of the other councils, and that's what they have done. So if it meant it needed to be removed, I'd be happy to remove it, but I'd also like to get some feedback about where else it might live from the officers.
Do the officers want to comment? I mean, I know the officers' recommendation, but not really.
Through the chair, if the resolution was to be adopted as is right now under the Code of Conduct, it allows for discipline action to occur against the conduct of an elected member if they don't provide detail of their political affiliation.
Double blind. Councillor Archibald.
Thank you, particularly for that last comment. I share the concerns that Councillor Lang has raised, but I know that over in the East Coast, where people do declare affiliations, it is very much, the councils are very much driven by party politics, and it's like a badge. I'm a Green Party elected member and I'm a Labor Party elected member, or whatever it is. So it's on the website of the council. If you look at Brisbane City Council anyway, it certainly is. And so it's a very different ballgame. Fremantle has really never had party politics embedded in it in any visible way. And I can certainly remember a time back in the early 90s where if you had any kind of affiliation with a party, people tended not to vote for you. That was off the back of the 80s being very much driven by party politics in a sense. So I would I mean, the other question I would have is that given that this is not part of the Local Government Act, just how enforceable is it? So I I don't think I can support this particular motion here tonight. I think when we come into this chamber, if there is any conflict of interest, we should declare it. And if any one of us ever feels like our party affiliation, which I don't have, in those who do have it, is somehow a conflict, then I'm sure that they would declare it too. So I certainly share the sentiment, but I think, you know, if it was part of the Local Government Act, it was part of the structure in which we operated under, that would seem to me a bit of a different thing. But at this stage, I don't think I can support this.
Councillor Kamada?
Yeah, my two bobs worth. So I've listened to both sides of the argument and toed and froed with my where I sit with this, and I 100% appreciate the intent here, and I think that it is good to be transparent in these areas. I'm happy to declare that I'm not a member of any party, but where I've landed with this is probably with Councillor Thompson. If it was something along the lines of not having being part of the code of conduct or the word requirement, I'd be more comfortable with that. But as it sits, I'd probably have to vote against it.
Yeah, I mean, it was good to read this because it really made me think about what do I consider every time I look at an agenda paper, and you go through all possible things that could be related to that agenda paper. You know, I think I've been accused of not declaring a cat, and I'm like, it's absolutely not coming into my consideration when I consider what the best policy is for the city. So the design of the Local Government Act and of the codes of conduct that sit under that are really, and this is, you know, I think when you sit through all the WALGA training, the key message is you need to decide what is influencing your thinking, and you need to think long and hard about that. And if there is anything that's clouding your judgment, you need to declare it. It's plain and simple. Anything, union membership, religion, you know, member of an advocacy group. If any of those things, ownership of a pet, you know, any of those things, if they're clouding your judgment, you should declare it. What I worry about having a register is it's kind of like, well, it's a default declaration. You can look at that and say all the time you must be bearing that in mind. And of course you're not. You know, absolutely. If the Labor Party was looking for a development application and you're a member of the Labor Party, if the Greens were looking to amend the use of a building and it came to council, of course you'd have an interest. But to think that every single decision, that you want that as your default disclosure, just makes me really, really uncomfortable. And it almost prejudges thinking that you've not yet done, and nor should you have done until you have read that agenda. So I'm not comfortable with it. I'm like Councillor Mofflin. If anyone asks me, I am absolutely straight up and open about that. But what I also say is, what I find is that Labor Party, Liberal Party, in this election you could probably argue the toss a little bit, but they don't make policy that affects decision making at local government. They just don't. You know, what we deal with, 99% of our agenda papers and the stuff that's driven by staff is just the stuff of local government. And forget political party policy, it just doesn't even touch what we do. Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, thanks. I was going to support this and I've changed my mind having listened to the debate. One of the things that particularly concerns me is the register has the potential to create this sense of normalisation of party politics in local government. And that is something that just I am so opposed to. I am vehemently opposed to party politics basically ruling the last part of government, the closest to the community, in the way that it has over East. I mean, anyone that watched that wonderful program, Rats in the Rank, would guarantee that we do not, there is no benefit in having local government almost if party politics becomes the norm. Having said that, I understand the idea of the register. I think all of us, I know I have been a member of a political party, the Greens. I've even run for state parliament, so people know that. But at one point, and this is the bit that kind of flips me over a little bit. So thinking about what Councillor Lawler was saying, in that there was a moment in the Greens where they wanted to run candidates in local government, and I know I very actively inside the party said, I cannot be a part of that. That is so, it's just a disaster for local government if you start to run candidates as Greens candidates. And the Greens, rank and file, actually have a very different point of view and were, putting pressure on me to basically agree to their point of view, at which point, of course, I resigned from the party because that was the right thing to do. And it talks to that concern about, being politicised by the party and being expected to toe the political position of that particular party. And I would implore any elected member that felt that they were in that position, that they were not able to represent the Fremantle community because some higher agency was trying to influence them over and above what the community has a right to expect from their elected member. If you feel like that, and not everyone is going to feel like that, I didn't feel like that for some time, but as soon as I felt like that, I had to put that political party out of my mind, not be a member, and get on with the job of representing the Fremantle community. So there is this sense that you should declare it. A voluntary register doesn't work because it doesn't really help the community know one way or another. If it's voluntary, well, they'll still come up to me every election and say, well, you're a member of the Greens and you're running as the Greens. And I'm saying, well, no, I'm not. I remember the time when literally when I said I didn't want to be a member of the Greens party because of their approach to running candidates. What did they do? They ran a candidate against me. Even then, people in the public were saying, well, you're also, one of the Greens candidates. And it's like, well, yeah, people are going to make their judgment one way or another. I still get it today. You're just a member of the Greens and that's how you vote. And that's how people will see it. I don't think the register is going to change that, but particularly I'm really concerned that it creates this normalisation of party politics in local government, and I'm so opposed to that, that's the bit that's flipping me to say, don't have a register.
Councillor Sullivan, thank you. Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thank you. I, like Councillor Sullivan, think that I have changed my mind since sitting here, and I'm going to go through my kind of rambling notes. And I appreciate Councillor Sullivan really driving home this point that we don't want to see local government becoming a place of party politics. That's not what we're here to do. But I do think that we should be clear that while we don't see party-affiliated decisions coming across the desks like a development application from a political party, there's no doubt that we do interact with state and federal politics to a degree. And I think that, being transparent with political affiliations as councillors is an important part of that. I mean, we are trying to work with different levels of government on a range of projects. And we have seen throughout the election promises certain things that mean that we would have to be working with different levels of government. And I don't think we should be sitting here and pretending that we don't interact with those levels of government, or that potentially, that we interact or make decisions that maybe don't come across the desks but are influenced by various levels of government. And I understand the intent of the policy in that we have a duty to be transparent with our conflicts and our disclosures. And there are constantly people who will accuse, all of us of being members of different political parties. And I guess previously, maybe before this debate, I thought maybe this is a solution of the way that we stop that. But I think, as Councillor Sullivan also pointed out, whether or not people are going to take this register, you know, if people are not ready to take our individual words on yes or no, why would they then change their mind if there's a register? And I think also that, you know, if this was our automatic disclosure, then from a governance lens, where does that kind of stop? Obviously, it's slightly different, as Councillor Oliver pointed out, that the constitutions are clear in potential disciplinary action, but as Councillor Thompson pointed out, you know, religion is just as highly up there. So I have sat on the line for this one, but I think that I'm not comfortable in bringing party politics completely into it. I think we can't deny that we are within a system that interacts with party politics, but at the same time, bringing it in and setting standards creates difficulty. And throughout all of this, I really don't want a decision from us tonight, which I think has been demonstrated through our conversation to be one that's against transparency. I guess I haven't said that I'm not a member of a political party, but you know, this discussion has highlighted that that's not the reason that people will not be supporting this. It's because of a governance lens or bringing party politics. We're all very open if people from the community would like to know if we're members of political parties. And I think that that transparency is what's needed. So I'll always be transparent with that going forward and have been.
Thanks, Councillor Williamson-Wong. If we have no further speakers, I'll go to Councillor Lang to close.
Thanks. While I have the microphone, I would like to update that piece as suggested by Councillor Thompson to make it a voluntary register.
Okay. So have you got some specific words there for the officers? Because I think they are now wondering where to put that. And while you're there, Councillor Lang, you happy with as soon as practical at the end?
I would rather put a date on it. And is there if this voluntary register was to be created and put on the website, how long may that take?
That's a bit of a question without notice, I think.
Well, let's just say June 30 as a date, just so there is an end date on it. June 30th. Yep. Yeah. So instead of being in the code of conduct, it's just a voluntary register. While that's being finalised, I really do appreciate the debate on this topic tonight. It's something I've always wanted to do, bring this forward to the chamber, and you know, maybe a little bit nervous it might upset the apple cart a little bit. Don't go there, as Doug said, you know, politics and religion. But I'm really glad I did bring it up, and everyone had a really good perspective to bring to this discussion. And so I really appreciate that. And yeah, respecting Councillor Moffin, you have declared tonight you're part of a party, but also saying if it was influencing you in any decision, you'd declare it at the time also. And that's, yeah, I really appreciate those elements of the debate this evening. I do get the sense the unintended consequence could be the normalisation of party politics, as Councillor Sullivan touched on. But at the same time, it might help eliminate it or call it out. It could go either way. I'm not convinced that it would normalise party politics. I don't see a scenario where we create this register and then all the political parties are running and throwing candidates at Fremantle because we have a register. I don't see that scenario happening. It would perhaps call it out in time. And we do, as Councillor Sullivan mentioned also, we do know that perhaps there are political parties looking to seed candidates in local government. And with the register as a voluntary register, there's a higher likelihood of perhaps that being called out sooner than that occurring in stealth. The voluntary register will work for what we're trying to achieve here, and that's just making it easier for the community to ask the question. And it's making it, coming back to the grassroots of local government elections as well, people who are part of political parties do get a leg up in elections, and I just want to make it easier for grassroots campaigns and also make it easier for our community to ask a question. Feel comfortable to ask a question. You have a register, are you on it, are you part of a party, rather than it being a totally taboo subject. So I appreciate the feedback, and the voluntary register probably provides a nice middle ground. So thank you all for putting so much consideration into this one.
Alrighty, I'm going to put that to a vote. So all those in favour of what's now on the screen, Councillors Williamson, Wong, Lang, Lorva and Kamada, and those against, Councillors Thompson, Van Dawson, Sullivan, Fitzharding, Mofflin, Graham, Archibald, so that's lost. Okay. All right, that brings us to the next nom, which is my nom. I'd like to move the alternative motion that I really appreciate the feedback of particularly Councillor Sullivan, but also Councillor Archibald in articulating a better way of saying this. So do I have a seconder for that one? Councillor Sullivan? Excellent. We've probably prosecuted this a little bit. I guess I've got to a point with Colley Street. I think some people know, maybe they don't, that I had some pretty frustrating interactions with the major landowner down there. I think we really did sit down and say, like, is there any way that we could activate your buildings for you or help you activate them? Or do you have a particular tenant in mind? Can we go out and try and... We literally said everything is on the table for those buildings because we are so sick of having them vacant and so sick of the mess that's created by people sleeping there. And look, I appreciate, that, but there's no effort made, zero effort made in Colley Street and to a lesser extent in Nan to create a nice environment for people. And what I was, I guess, disappointed to find out is that there's no intention of that owner to do anything about it for the next 10 years. Followed up and I said, well, can I confirm with you that what you're planning to do is exactly what you're doing now for the next 10 years? And I didn't get a reply. So I'm assuming that could be read as a yes. Anyway, I appreciate I'm one in a long list of people who have banged their head against this particular wall. But it did make me go, what do we have some control over? And what we have some control over is the experience of walking down that street. So while those buildings are in the state that they are, at least we can do something to make that street feel more like a place that you would want to be, because there are some businesses that struggle on Colley Street. And, good on them for holding it together despite their environment. There's also very, much loved businesses on Nan Street who are doing what they can to make that a better place. So I won't bang on about it anymore. I do think it'd be great if we could investigate this project. It did start out as one-way traffic. Councillor Sullivan cautioned me against that and said resolve vehicle circulation, which sounds, like it could be a lot of things. But certainly what we want to do is try and create more room for people, more shade from trees, and the ability for bikes to get up and down there without being on the road. That's it. Councillor Sullivan, a seconder, did you wish to speak? And then I'll go to you, Councillor Lang.
I'll try and be quick. Thank you for Mayor Fitzharding for allowing me to influence the wording of the recommendation. I have been involved in the last two major iterations of the reviews of particularly Colley Street, but it was the Colley Street, Market Street, Piazza, Nan Street. They're all interconnected and they're actually quite complex, and that's why I thought it was better to have a more nuanced description of the sorts of things that we might like to achieve without being very prescriptive that a one-way street solution might be automatically the answer. And the reason I say that is because, having worked in Pakenham Street, for some considerable time, a one-way street, I can tell you that it actually encourages people to drive significantly faster than they would ever dare to drive in a street like Nan Street, where there is always the possibility of a car coming the other direction and the like. So one-way streets aren't necessarily always the right solution. And when it comes to Colley Street, there are so many different elements within the street, not the least of which is the multi-storey car park. And also the fact that it does get a lot of traffic, both Pakenham Street and Colley Street, in terms of circulating traffic through the city, and particularly when we do road closures, it is those sorts of streets that suddenly become gridlocked because you can't actually get out anywhere. You actually end up in this relentless circulation trapped in the West End. And so there are considerations that need to be made. I would also note very quickly that the previous iterations, especially the first iteration, did attract a very large degree of negative comment from the West End community, the residential community particularly, but also philosophically, and that was probably more to do, or in part to do, with the Market Street Piazza as much as anything. But of course, when Councillor Pemberton re-engaged that process successfully, I haven't heard anyone say that the Market Street Piazza has been a bad thing. In fact, it's been a really wonderful thing in that area. So I think there are some solutions. The very last thing I would say is, having been through the process of trying to get trees planted in the West End, it is diabolically near impossible. And you almost need to actually identify where we could plant trees and design the road around it, rather than ending up with a nice design, a nice theoretical design that shows some trees, and then go through the agony, the sheer agony of finding out that you can't plant a single bloody one of them. And in fact, I think from memory, in College Street, when the car park was built, there were trees shown along that section in between the car bays, and they've never been able to go in. So imagine that Colley Street, if all of those spots where the trees had been shown could have happened. When we did Bannister Street, we wanted to plant the trees on the ugly side of the street. I won't go into that too much because it might offend an architect. But the ugly side of the street needed the trees, but we couldn't plant them on the ugly side of the street, so we had to plant them on the other side of the street, which covered up the heritage buildings. So there are a lot of things, components that need to be taken into account, and I didn't want to sort of start that process with the sense that there is a single solution. So thank you, Mayor for changing that.
Not a problem. Councillor Graham.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just a real quick one. When I first read Colley Street, one-way street, the first thing that came to my mind was the Colley Street car park. Now, I thought, does that mean everyone coming out of the Colley Street car park's got to then turn right and then go around into Nan and come back down to Pakenham to get out? I mean, surely that is not going to happen. What we want is obviously people coming out of the Colley Street car park, turning left, getting onto Marine Terrace and then heading down to Giro Road, South Street, and then further out the other way. So that's just my comment at this stage. I know it's early days. I think Councillor Sullivan sort of hopefully touched on that he did mention that has to be considered. But I mean, if you're looking at just making Colley Street car park people turn right, it's only adding to the problem. And I'd never support that, whether it was we're making that decision now or in a year's time. So anyway, there you go.
Councillor Lang.
Yeah, I think rather than getting caught up in a detail like that, turning right out of the car park, we'll figure that out. But at large, this is a really, I think, it'll be a great improvement for the city if and when it's rolled out. More new bike lanes, more new paths, more trees in the CBD. This is what all the things I love. New footpaths. Rather than relaying footpaths again. So this, and the ability for people to, the strategic plan, walkable city, walking from the Esplanade into the Cappuccino Strip or wherever it might be. I just think there's lots to like about this. So I look forward to us putting a plan together, but it would be great to see it happen.
All right, if there's no further speakers on that one, I will close. It's funny, Councillor Graham, I did get into drafting, like how I thought it could work, and then I deleted it all because I was like, no, I'm trying to be a traffic engineer, and that's a terrible idea for me to do that. But I did think it would be two-way out to the car park entry, and then you'd go one way. Regardless of all of that, I think Councillor Sullivan's done a much better job than I did in articulating the principles that we're trying to achieve, and they are absolutely what Councillor Lang has said about trees, paths, people, and I am mystified by how they can do this in Sydney. Like, what is happening in Darlinghurst under their roads that is different to what happens in Fremantle? Which is, I won't repeat that comment on the mic, but it does challenge me that there does seem to be all of these green cycleways through Sydney, and I'm sure their underground services are as haphazard, crazy and everywhere as ours. So we've got good contacts at City of Sydney who I'm sure would be happy to talk about how they navigate that very extensive challenge that no doubt exists in Darlinghurst and we know exists in Freo. All right, I'll put this one to a vote. All those in favour? And that looks to be unanimous. Thank you. I should have done this a little bit earlier, but the meeting is 3 hours unless by resolution of council. I quote, standing orders. So someone needs to move that we go beyond 3 hours and second it. Councillor Lorver, seconded by Councillor Moughlin. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Wasn't exactly enthusiastic, but I'd say it was unanimous. All right. Thank you. All right, Councillor Lorver, we're coming to you now for a notice of motion.
Can I move that motion, please?
Yep. Do we have a seconder for that one? Councillor Moughlin?
Great. Well, I won't speak much on this. It's pretty straightforward, and I definitely won't change my mind as much as I did on the first nom. I don't think I've ever gone back and forth on an issue during debate as many times as I did on that one here tonight. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I'll just leave any comments for closing if folks have questions about it.
All right, councillors. Councillor Lang?
I missed the last meeting and understand why this has been brought forward. I know Samson relatively well, and I think all of these, if we can investigate all these suggestions, come back with some options for discussion, I think that's going to be good for Samson. Again, like I said in the last item, our community strategic plan, this just helps Samson become a more walkable city, and we should be looking at that walkable city lens that should apply to everywhere. So these could be some great easy wins. Some of them are easy wins, some of them might be a bit harder, so I support it.
Councillor Archibald?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question. It says to bring a report back within 2 months. I just wanted to ask, given everything that's going on, just how reasonable that is, particularly if you want something that's fairly comprehensive, which seems to be what's being requested.
Thanks. I'll go to officers on that one. Cool.
Through the chair, I guess it's how much detail we put in. I think to actually implement some of the ideas when we're talking about scheme reviews, quite frankly, we should be looking at 2 or 3 years, because there's going to be a big piece of work needed in terms of local planning strategy and a new scheme. That said, there might be some quick wins. So I think we can do an early piece of work just to go, here's the list, this one could be quick and easy, these other ones could be a lot longer. So I think at that level, looking at the sort of the strategic options, it can be done in 2 months, but I guess with any nom, it would be other things that we don't do in those 2 months to do it. Other than that, we can do it.
All right, councillors. The question was raised, I think, at the briefing as to whether people wanted this in separate parts. If anyone does want this voted in separate parts, it would be good to tell me ahead of time. I Just waiting for anyone to think. Nope, you're good. Councillor Lorber.
Yeah, just in response to Councillor Archibald, the 2-month timeline was deemed kind of doable when this was put forward. That was the feedback I received from staff, and I think this is the first step of something. Hopefully, I mean, we've got to have information before we can consider anything. So this is coming back with all these options, and if there's more work that needs to be done around a certain one, but it has potential, then we can consider that at that time as well. So, yeah, I think that this will go a long ways to ensuring that, you know, all of our suburbs are meeting the goals in our strategic community plan. And yeah, we did it to ourselves to be considering this, but, you know, we could wind up better for it. So, thanks.
All right, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour and against? So councillors Graham and Thompson against, everyone else in favour, that's carried. Okay, I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. There's no urgent business, late items, confidential business, so I'll declare the meeting closed at 9:34 p.m. Thank you.